away from their families to study education issues and regulations in order to provide the kind of accountability our community expects. New York celebrated School Board Recognition Week last week. We have presented each of you with a proclamation from Governor Cuomo recognizing your dedication of service. Will all of our board members please stand? Tabitha Wilson, Dr. Shadar Shatur, Jennifer Lang, Ann Savage, President Adler, Vicki Smith, Ellen Roach. That's it. So please give them a round of applause, and we are presenting you with your proclamations at this time. You make our school district and our community a better place. So thank you so very much for your service. We had our second community forum regarding the Albany High School principal search last night at Hackett Middle School. We had about 20 parents and community members in attendance. Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Instruction, Lori McKenna, led a very productive discussion. We had some great questions and comments and are looking forward to our final forum next Monday at Albany High. That meeting will be in the cafeteria beginning at 6 p.m. We've also received about 250 responses to our online survey so far. We are looking forward to using all of that feedback to inform our interviews later this month. For the second year in a row, we are asking our families, staff, and students to participate in surveys that will help us guide our school improvement work. The Family Engagement Survey and School Performance Survey are part of our work through the diagnostic tool for school district evaluation review. This is something that our state education department has required of all of our schools. We are eager to hear the perspectives of our families, staff, and students as an important part of that work. The surveys will be open through December 22nd. All responses are anonymous, and we ask that each of our families complete just one survey per household. Our staff also will be working with students in grades 3 through 12 to complete the survey. For more information, including the survey password and links to the survey in multiple languages, please visit albanyschools.org. We received good news this week from the State Department of Education. Our two schools identified under the state's receivership law, Albany High School and Phillips Schuyler Achievement Academy, made demonstrable improvement last school year. Both schools showed significant progress on performance measures agreed to by the district and the state. For Albany High, those measures included more students passing Regent exams, a higher graduation rate, improved safety, and improved attendance. For Schuyler, those measures included more students performing at level 2 and above in ELA and mathematics, improved attendance, and significantly lower suspension rates. This outstanding news is a testament to the ongoing hard work going on at both of our schools. I congratulate the students, faculty, staff, and administrators for their efforts and encourage them to keep up the great work. I visited 3 of our schools in the past week, and in my ongoing efforts to get to know our district, I've had the privilege of meeting staff and students here at New Scotland Elementary School, as well as Delaware Community School and Montessori Magnet School. On all of my visits this fall, I have observed students interested and motivated in their learning. I have engaged with teachers and staff who are committed to the success of all of our children and working diligently each day to create a caring environment that is conducive for learning. One of the highlights for me was this week getting to participate in the writing celebration at Delaware Community School. The adults were able to work with students to give them actionable feedback on their writing samples. Plus, it was just a great way to interact with our 7-year-olds who were so engaged in their learning. Along with learning about our new school district, my new school district, I am enjoying the opportunity to learn about my community. I have seen firsthand that Albany is a city that supports its public schools and its students. Whether meeting with elected officials, business leaders, or community advocates, it is obvious that we share the goal of having strong schools capable of meeting each child's unique needs. This was affirmed in 3 community engagement opportunities in which I participated in recent weeks: the Albany Fund for Education Gala, the Hudson Valley Community College Gala, and a reception with local business leaders at the Capital Region Chamber of Commerce. I look forward to continuing building relationships with our community partners that will support our efforts to prepare each and every child for college, career, and success. A reminder about a few days off from school this week. Our students will be off next Tuesday for the Superintendent's Conference Day. We have a range of professional development opportunities planned for all of our staff members, and we are looking forward to those great opportunities for our professionals to improve their practice. All of our schools and district offices will be closed next Friday in observance of Veterans Day. I now would like to invite Principal David Amodio and Assistant Principal Marilyn Jones-Oliver for a brief presentation about the great things that are happening here at New Scotland Elementary School. And we have a very special guest with us tonight, Miss Natalia Ortiz, a second grader here at New Scotland. So please, let's welcome our guest speakers.
Good evening. My name is David Amodio, and I am the building principal. On behalf of our assistant principal, Marilyn Jones-Oliver, and I, welcome to New Scotland Elementary School, home of the Purple Tigers.
As you would notice, we have our vision statement on the screen. We worked as a whole school team and crafted this simple and comprehensive vision and mission statement for New Scotland. This is the first time that we have looked at it several years, but we arrived at it, agreed upon it, and this is our vision statement.
Our first demographic slide reveals our current enrollment in the building. This is our highest enrollment at New Scotland Elementary in 3 years. The decision was made late in the summer to collapse 4 sections of 3rd grade into 3 in order to accommodate our burgeoning kindergarten enrollment, thus creating a 4th section of kindergarten this year. You can see our average class size is 22 and above across all grade levels except pre-K, which is fixed at 18 children each. Our English as a new language learner population is also growing, and it's over 10% higher than it was last year.
Our last demographic slide, if you'll notice, this year we added a .4 ENL instructor based on need. The number of TAs may appear high, but please keep in mind that 14% of our students are identified as students with special needs. We support them in our 6 co-taught classes and 3 self-contained classes.
And I'll just back up a little bit about our diversity demographics. If you do the addition, it will come just above 100%. That's because there is rounding involved here, of course. But Asian and Pacific Islanders are represented as 10% of the population, Black or African American, 20%, white, 46%, Hispanic, 15%, less than 1% Native American, Alaskan, and 9% multiracial. Now we're going to move into discussing our SEP progress. So Tenet 2, as you may be aware, focuses on school leader practices and decisions. And as we noted here, Mrs. Jones-Oliver and I are committed to performing regular walkthroughs with a particular focus on learning objectives and higher order thinking skill questioning practices. We meet regularly to discuss what we observed and to identify areas where more support is needed. And we are working our way through Google Documents and the Google Drive with pretty good success at this point. It's been a little bit of a challenge for some of us, but we're charging forward. Tenet 3 focuses on curriculum development and support. During last year's IIT or DITSE review, the DTSDE, our reviewers felt that there needed to be more deliberate planning for using HOTS questioning techniques. And to that end, we have engaged the services of Ms. Alexia Ryan to support our teachers in strengthening this integral function of their practice. And as stated here, the new curriculum components are serving as a foundation for this work.
Tenet 4 focuses on teacher practices and discussions. And so we have, this is Tenet 4 goal, yes. So we have identified a few teachers who have agreed to be videotaped teaching their classes for the purpose of grade level team critiques and discussions to the end of equipping them with a repertoire of effective questioning strategies.
Tenet 5 focuses on student, social, and emotional developmental health. PBIS, Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, as you know, is a central component of this work. Tier 1 supports are classroom teacher initiated and monitored. The 3 Bs, be safe, be respectful, be responsible, represent the backbone of classroom management. Our goal here is for children who need a little more support from our student support team to help them to meet their goals at a success rate of 80%. And as mentioned here, our RTI behavior team met late in the summer to develop roles and responsibilities, a framework for our team and faculty to engage in more fluid and transparent communication with them in supporting our collective efforts. We did disseminate a behavioral resource handbook that we created late in the summer and disseminated that to faculty and staff, outlining the expectations and protocols. And that was during one of my principal PD sessions in the morning. Late in the summer also, I met with a fellow elementary school principal to discuss best practices and frameworks that are already in place in their building and which they have experienced success towards the end of the previous activity, being that there was really no sense to reinvent the wheel in a place where it was already working very successfully. I reached out to a colleague and discussed some of the things that were working well in their building.
Our Tenet 6 goal focuses on family and community engagement. And so at our writing celebration in the spring, we had parents who were involved, obviously, and we had 10 fifth grade students who were strategically positioned at the center, at certain entrances on the stairs. Each one of these students had 7 survey questions on a clipboard. These students were asked to ask parents particular questions as to what they see or need or would like to see at New Scotland Elementary School. And this information, once tabulated and calculated, was shared and reviewed by the BLT committee.
The second activity up there on the slide is about the BLT creating a collection of grade level appropriate HOTS and depth of knowledge questions and questioning strategies. So our BLT met and we created these lists that we will be including in report cards and in books that are being sold at our Fall Harvest Festival book fair, which is later this month. Clearly this ties back, this activity, the second one there, ties back to tenets 2, 3, and 4 in our efforts to support parents in supporting their children at home as it dovetails with what we're striving to accomplish here in our classrooms.
And we will obviously like to celebrate Dad's Take Your Child to School Day because we had an exciting day. We had over 400 fathers attending New Scotland Elementary School in this gym.
There was a lot of bagel slicing that morning. Welcome Back to School Community Barbecue was held on Friday early evening, September 29th. Giffey's Barbecue provided the delicious chicken and salads and rolls and beverages. It was a really wonderful event. Almost 200 meals were served at that community barbecue. It was a great success. Our PBIS assemblies were held, we split the building into, so pre-K through 2 and then grades 3 through 5. Those assemblies were held on September 5th, in which we shared the updated code of conduct with the children and the teachers. I'd like to point out that we now have smart technology in every grade level classroom, K through 5, and now in every special area classroom. We completed this work during the spring and summer. Lastly, WeatherBug, we still have it, still on the roof of the building. It's a weather monitoring station and it comes with a complete curriculum, and there is an app available for your smart device should you choose to engage in that. The kids get a real kick out of it. They come in every morning, they want to see what the weather is. They're wanting to know if they're going out for recess or not. So it's a nice feature of the building. And lastly, This is something that's been several years in the making. Over the summer, and for the past 3 years, I've been collaborating, pleading with the Albany Police Department to help us out in creating a safer parking situation here at New Scotland Elementary School during pickup and drop-off. So I did collaborate with the Albany Police Department, specifically Officer Gordon McLean, the City of Albany Traffic Engineering, City School District of Albany Security Supervisor Jack Rogan, City of Albany Common Council 9th Ward Leader Judy Deschott, and we met several times over the summer and finally made this happen. I wasn't going to take the chance that it was going to fall apart, so I figured I would get everybody involved, everyone's approval, so to minimize the chances that this wasn't going to get pulled off, and it did, by golly. So you see right now we've got the traffic cones out there. There's just a couple of pictures. So they're there bright and early in the morning, and then we take them back in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's just meant to be kind of drive up to the front of the line, God bless you, drop your child off, and in the afternoon it's the same thing. And I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it, so I think most people are appreciative of it. It still can be quite an inconvenience at times, but I think we're working with the parents very effectively in letting them know this really is for the safety of the children. So they're gladly parking across the street and using the crosswalks. On most days, we're really trying to instill in that we want them to model good behavior for the children and not to jaywalk rather, but to please use the crosswalks and the crossing guards. So we're making progress, but I'm glad it's here. Officer McLean and I were out in the hot August sun painting the curb yellow ourselves, and we got the traffic cones, and I labeled them with a stencil that I got online for $15. But it was a good thing, safety first, and it's working, so we're thrilled to have that finally. And that is it for us, so thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Natalia Ortiz. I am 7 years old. I am in 2nd grade here at New Scotland Elementary School. My favorite subject is art because I've been doing art since I was very young. I like to create artwork using all kinds of materials. What I like the most about New Scotland Elementary School is that all kids can have fun, learn and have fun here. I like all the different activities I get to do at New Scotland Elementary School. Thank you to the Board of Education, the parents, teachers, and Mr. Amodio for letting me speak tonight.
Madam President, members of the board, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mrs. Adams, and thank you to the New Scotland Group. Thank you so much. The Albany Board of Education welcomes district parents, residents, students, and other people to our meeting. Community involvement at board meetings is encouraged so we can better understand your views. By law, individual student information and particular personnel issues cannot be discussed in public. We encourage you to share specific student or staff concerns with the superintendent or other appropriate staff. Please note that the board generally does not respond to public comment. If you need a response, please consider contacting us via email, phone, or postal mail. When recognized by the board president, please state your name and city of residence. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes, and speakers will be notified by the board president when their time has expired. Kenny Bruce.
Can I get a warning when it gets down to 30 seconds? All right, thank you. Kenny Bruce, and I reside in Albany. The safety and security of our students should be our top priority. Our students should not be scared to go to class, practice, or rehearsals for fear of sexual harassment or fear of violent threats. They should be able to enjoy a comfortable learning environment. Disciplinary action related to the actions of one student should not adversely impact tens to hundreds of other students. The the Albany High School students created a petition that reads, "We, the undersigned students of Albany High School music programs, are requesting that the rules newly imposed on September 15th, 2017, which limit our educational experience and musical development, be rescinded. The rules imposed on the music department constrain the creative growth and spirit. A quality product is dependent upon the blending of mutual talent. The music wing in our home, our family, is our family, and we suggest the previous operating guidelines be restored. Teachers and administrators should be empowered to assure that students adhere to both old rules and new rules, and they should not be afraid of retaliation. Administrators cannot just look the other way when tests and answers are stolen and used for higher grades. Assistant coaches should never be hired while being accused of sexual harassment and violent threats. And even more importantly, lifeguards should not be hired while being accused of sexual harassment and violent threats. They should not have never, ever have any authority over our children. A student should not receive preferential treatment because of who he knows or who he happens to be related to. For over 18 months, I've been sounding the alarm that this board feels that they are above the law. The rules don't apply to them. They are accountable to no one. We as a community cannot wait until someone gets hurt before we step in. We want our school district back, Sue Adler. And on behalf of Albany citizens, I'm here tonight to request your resignation. Follow me on Kenny Bruce for Albany.
Madam President, may I speak?
Of course, Mr. Honeywell.
Mr. Bruce, I was made aware of your post this afternoon, which you largely just read from. As always, it's safe to assume I have a lot more facts on the situation than you do. So I just wish to state on behalf of the Board of Education that your accusations are false, malicious, and unfounded, and really should not be repeated.
Dennis Gaffney. Thank you. Ms. Brown.
Good evening. I'm a little sick and under the weather, so please bear with me. My name is LaToya Brown. I am a resident of Albany County. I am also employed by the Albany City School District. I am here today to voice my severe concerns about Edmund J. O'Neill Middle School. Yesterday, my daughter was almost assaulted by a pack of almost 50 students that followed her from school to the Albany Public Library. If it was not for the fact that they opened up the door to let my daughter in, those kids would have did the same thing that they did to my daughter's friend, to her in front of that library, which is stomp the girl's face into the concrete. No 11-year-old child should have two black eyes. All right? Now, I'm not putting this all on the school. I can't put it there. It has to go for the parents as well. We need to hold parents responsible for their children's actions. The Albany police officer told me that since that school has opened up, the same kids that they chased away from my daughter are the same kids that they've been chasing every single day after school. The same troublemakers. My daughter is not a troublemaker. She does not want to fight. What parent in here what do you do when you answer your phone and your daughter's screaming to the top of her lungs, "Please come and get me, to jump me. Please come and save me. What do you do? What do you do when you pull up to the library and there's 50, 60 kids out there and these kids are tying their stuff up ready to jump on me because I'm there to save my child? Why do I have to choose between my freedom and my daughter's safety? Because I'm telling you, I'm that parent. Oh yes, I will I will knock a kid right on their behind for my child. So I'm telling you, Albany School Board, what you do for one child for protection, you need to do for all. You need to start holding these parents accountable. Call them in, fine them, give them a ticket. Tell them, you want to know what? Your bad kid can stay home. Because if their education is important to me as well. Bad, good, black, white, green, purple. But my child will always come first. Her safety is my safety, my main concern, and that is out of hand. That's all I got to say.
Ms. Brown? Ms. Brown? I just wanted to make sure she knew they were going to, okay, all right. Anyway, that concludes public comment. We're on to routine consent. May I get a motion to approve routine consent? Sorry, Ms. Roach, seconded by Ms. Smith. Any set-asides? Seeing none, all those in favor of routine consent? That is unanimous, thank you. Superintendent Adams, I believe this is your topic, the District Vision Mission Rollout. Okay, all right, good. I'm sorry, it was unanimous except for Ms. Wilson. I apologize, Ms. Wilson, for not waiting for the routine consent. Did you have any set-asides? Okay, thank you.
Good evening again, and Madam President, members of the board, and to the public. I'd like to move forward with presenting our vision and mission for 2017 and kind of walk you through the process that we've used as we move forward for this particular school year. Back in the fall, in August of this month, at our convocation, we were able to have about 1,700 attendees, and we completed a survey to help us with developing our district-wide mission and vision as we move forward. And we asked an essential question. We had about 37% respondees, which was about 622 respondees. Our essential question was, how do we want to be described as a school district, which I think is pretty apropos after we have heard some of the comments, especially from our parents that have input. Key areas of focus at that time: student achievement, quality instruction, accountable leadership, community and family engagement, and empowerment. When we received information through the survey, through conversations with community members at various events, informal and formal gatherings of information, these were the responses with where we want to be and how we want to be described as a school district. With that, we move forward with looking at how do we actually get to where we want to be. And it resulted in a focus on student achievement, focus on quality instruction and accountable leadership, and a focus on community and family engagement and empowerment. As we move forward and receive various input from all of our stakeholders, a comprehensive statement was developed. And so as we move forward, the City School District of Albany will be a district of excellence with caring relationships and engaging learning experiences that provide equitable opportunities for all students to reach their potential. Our mission statement: we will work in partnership with our diverse community to engage every learner in a robust educational program designed to provide the knowledge and skills necessary for success. And this is going to be a collective mission statement where we work in partnership with all of our families and our community members. Our measurable outcomes: focused in 5 areas: student achievement, the delivery of quality instruction, building our leadership capacity and increasing accountability, empowering our families, and partnering with our community. These goals align with our DSIP tenets, and so we want to make sure that everything that we do aligns with our district improvement plan as we move forward, and then the specific action steps at the school levels align with their school improvement plans and the tenets that they have expressed. And you heard some of those from the principal here at New Scotland. Our next steps in moving forward, we are looking at developing a multi-year planning process that focuses on the cycle of continuous improvement, enhancing the use of data-driven structures to improve our instructional and professional practices, and that's using data collectively, not just academic data, but behavioral data, looking at the social emotional component, and addressing the needs of all of our children. Building the relationships and leadership capacity at all levels throughout our organization, our families, and our community so that we can address those specific needs of our students. So at this time, I will entertain any questions from the board.
Ms. Wilson? Dr. Chator? Ms. Lang? Ms. Roach?
This one's on, okay. I just wanted to thank Ms. Adams for the work that she's done bringing the board together and bringing staff and administration together to work on these and hone. It took a lot of work to hone them and make sure that they represented everyone's thoughts and ideas. And I really appreciate you working with us through that process to really articulate where we wanted to be and what we wanted to do. So thank you so much.
Ms. Smith? Ms. Savage? Thank you very much, Mrs. Adams, for turning this around quickly and for engaging as many people as you did in the process. We will. So the public doesn't know if they haven't been at meetings before. This is up for discussion now, and the way the board works is that at the next board meeting in 2 weeks, we will have this up for an action. If there are comments that anybody wants to make on these, feel free to send them to the district or to the board. But thank you very much, Mrs. Adams. Mr. Hogan, I believe you're up number 7, discussion of the budget calendar.
Yes, the packet included a draft version of a budget calendar for the upcoming 2018-19 budget process. As you see, it begins actually tonight and goes through May. I just want to make a couple comments. There were a couple changes, and there's a revised version that went out November 1st, and the reason for those 2 changes are that we noticed on January 10th that there were 4 other major events in the district occurring, so we wanted to make that budget workshop originally scheduled for January 10th, move it a day to January 9th. And also in March on page 3, originally it was written as being in conjunction with the parent university. We did that last year for the first time. This year there doesn't happen to be any parent universities scheduled for that week, and additionally they've kind of been up and running now. They have their own agendas and their own materials to work with, so we had to remove that, and it'll just be held at an elementary school, the 4th meeting, and we will also look at the geographical location of where these 4 regional meetings are held when we consider the elementary presentation.
Starting on this side, Ms. Roach?
No questions right now, thanks.
Ms. Lang? Dr. Chator? Ms. Wilson? Ms. Smith? Ms. Savage?
Bill, how many people came to the January public budget workshops last year, approximately?
Last year, I would say 5 or 6. I can tell you historically we've been doing these, I would say about 5 years. We've had depending on what's going on, we've had as many as 30. One year I did it, we had a single person a couple of years ago. So it seems to range, depend on what's going on, and sometimes it's the economy or what's going on at the state level drives people to this. But these 2 January workshops are really kind of public education, school finance, and budgeting 101, and we use our city school district as an example when we talk about and explain, you know, the various revenue streams, the expenses, the mandates, et cetera.
So you think we should continue doing 2 sessions, even given the light enrollment last time? I just hate to see staff use their limited time to support such a small number of families.
It's really up to the pleasure of the board. We certainly could, as staff, we could merge the material and do it in one evening. Typically, these go, usually we schedule them for an hour, but they typically, depending on the questions, even with one person, they can go an hour and a half. But yeah, staff is willing to merge them, given the
I'm really looking to
participation.
you for some guidance. You're the one who's physically in the room. It just seems like a lot of work for 5 families to be for 2 nights. But
Dr. Chator?
I just want to address Anne. I just want to address Anne's question. I was one of those families the last 2 years, even before I was a board member. And yes, the attendance is sparse, but I think it's important to have those two because I think 1 year the weather was bad, so more people showed up to the second session than the first session. The first session was just me, Bill, and a couple other people. That's about it. So, having that second option is.
Ms. Roach?
I'd like to concur with Dr. Chator. I think it's important to have both sessions, both because they're on different nights of the week, both from each other and from the Thursday board meetings, and because even if only a few families happen to come, they're for the whole public. You know, they're for anyone in the public to attend. The public are the people that pay the bills here. I think that it's important for transparency to be able to explain them to be able to have that one-on-one time for conversation, because that's something that we often don't have, where it's you can ask a question directly about why is my tax levy like this? Can you explain the bill to me and actually get an explanation? I too was one of those family members years ago and found it useful. I think I went to one that was well attended, actually, maybe 15 or 20 people, and it was really productive. So I think that they're important to have.
So I'm going to say it may, in fact, be that we're doing school board recruitment by offering those sessions, because I believe I attended those as well in the past. But I wonder, and now I'm thinking outside the box, if this might be a place where we might consider exploring a live webinar approach that might engage more families who are not coming out in January, but still give us the same kind of transparency issues. So I suggest to staff that that be something that is considered as a possibility, since I agree with Ellen that having that one-on-one interaction is wonderful, and that could potentially be done with technology, and might be a good way for us to explore that in a limited environment.
And could I,
Ms. Smith?
yes. And could I also suggest, particularly if it's a webinar, that we might look at language translation? Okay. We've got such a diverse community, and I think it's really great to be able to offer this information in multiple language and present it also in such.
Anyone else? Mike.
I'm sorry, Vicki, were you talking just then about the January sessions or about all of the budget information? Okay. Yeah, that's a really good point with our increasing population. I don't know how we're serving them with the English only.
And that may be a place where technology will be the way to do it. Obviously, it may be very difficult for us to have the number of translators at any given budget session that we do, but if we're able to do it through technology, that is, you know, somewhere where someone can call in, or there's some way to make it available, even if it's, you know, at the meeting itself. So, thank you all very much. And again, like the discussion of mission rollout, where what we will be doing is next board meeting, we will be doing action on the budget calendar. We are now up to the special ed discussion for the evening.
Madam President, members of the board, Ms. McKenna will lead that discussion with our special education department as they come to the table. I want to say thank you so very much for all the hard work that you all have been doing. It is really good work as we focus on our students with disabilities and move forward in the upcoming school year.
Ms. McKenna, do you want to sit down and just move the mic over to you so you don't have to, I mean, you're welcome to stand there, but I'm also, Andre, can we, if Ms. McKenna comes and sits down at the table, can we actually move that podium so even though it's our board meeting in a sense and they're facing us, that maybe that might not be in the way of those people behind there? Or I can go move it. Thank you, Mr. Lesko. Thank you, Ms. Peretz, for acknowledging the request.
Good evening, President Adler, Superintendent Adams, Board of Ed members, community members, and colleagues. Presenting tonight is the Director of Special Education, Debbie Sharp, Assistant Director Elaine Greisler, and CSC Chairperson Katie McGill. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to review where we were last year, where we are now, and where we are going in the special education department. I would like to thank Tricia Wolf and Megan Warren for their support in the special education program file, which you all received on Friday, which allowed us to identify positive trends and areas for us to focus on moving forward. Before we begin our formal program review, I'd like to start with a few thoughts for us to think about, not only tonight, but moving forward. So the first thought I would like to share with you is the pathology lies within the system and not the student. And what I mean by that is children come to us who they are. When they come to us, we have already developed a system where we expect them to fit in. This is backwards. We need to begin to look at students as unique individuals and adjust our systems to them and not the other way around. The other thought I'd like to share with you tonight is that poverty, race, or disability should not be predictors of achievement. Again, what does this mean? We cannot use these as excuses for not setting high standards and demanding the best of our students. Our work needs to focus on disproportionality, both general education and special education, and ensure that expectations are the same for all students, regardless of race, poverty, or disability. Our students deserve nothing less. And the final thought I'd like to leave you with before we begin our presentation tonight is that the lack of quality reading instruction cannot be used as a criteria for special education. Again, what does this mean? Our students need systematic, explicit, direct reading instruction. All teachers need to be teachers of reading. So the format for our presentation tonight is we will provide you with a program overview, including budget and staffing, our progress on our 2016-2017 goals, our strengths and challenges identified from our data, our 2017 and 2018 goals, and the areas we will focus on this year and next, because there is no way that based on our data that we can complete all of the things that we need to do in order to move us forward this year. And finally, our 2018-19 recommendations and how we will measure change and determine our return on investment based on the programs and initiatives we have in place. Multitasking. Yep. This is really small, and I apologize in advance, but you do have this in your profile as well. So this shows us the budget for the 2017-18 school year, and it represents both general funds and IDEA 611 and 619 grant funds. The special ed, again, profile provides you with a breakdown of the two funding sources, so you can see the breakout of the general fund expenditures as well as the IDA 611 and 619. So this budget for this year represents almost $37 million. We saw a total increase from last year to this year of $832,000, primarily the increase is primarily because of increases in and salaries and benefits for instructional and non-instructional staff. We did see some increases in our charter schools, purchase services, and parentally placed students. I'll now turn it over to, oh, did I miss a slide, Katie? Oh, staffing, I'm sorry. So this slide shows you the number of special ed teachers and other staff in the district. And what I would like to point out, here is that, once we get to the slide, that the number of special education teachers in the district has decreased by 5.5 FTEs from last year to this year due to shifts in programs, restructuring of the integrated co-teaching classrooms, and just from attrition overall. The number of teaching assistants from last year to this year has increased by 21 in order to support the staffing requirements of new special ed classrooms. We have also added this year a 0.5 out-of-district psychologist to support the evaluation needs of students placed out of district. And this position would help to support evaluations of students attending BOCES, approve private programs, as well as residential programs, and charter and parochial schools. In addition, we've also added this year a full-time speech and language pathologist to ensure that the provisions of the mandated speech and language services are being met. I'd now like to turn it over to Katie to talk to you about the next portion.
The Special Education Department offers a continuum of programs and services for students ages 3 through 21. Services are offered along a continuum ranging from the least restrictive to a more restrictive environment. At the top of the continuum is the least restrictive environment. It's represented by a student in general education who receives related services only, like speech, counseling, physical therapy, occupational therapy, etc. Consultant teacher and integrated co-teaching represent services provided in the mainstream classroom. Then, starting with resource room services, students do not receive instruction alongside their general education peers. Next, there are special class programs that contain only special education students. The district offers many different types of special class programs to address a range of needs, including autism, social-emotional, and academic challenges. If the district is unable to meet the special education needs of students, then a referral is made to an out-of-district program like BOCES or day treatment programs. Students may be placed on home instruction due to medical fragility or while they're awaiting an out-of-district program. So this graph depicts the program location for the total population of students with disabilities. The majority of students with disabilities are programmed for in a district building. About 12% of the students are programmed for out of district in BOCES or day treatment settings. 4% of students with disabilities attend charter schools, and about 1% attend non-public schools. So here's an overview of special education data. The district's classification rate the district's classification rate of 12.87% remains under the state average, indicating that the special education department is classifying students at a comparable rate to all districts in New York State. Secondly, the high school graduation rate for students with disabilities remains around 35%. High school staff is receiving training in the use of data dashboard to monitor student attendance and grades in order to know where to target their interventions. There is also a focus on the freshman 5 to ensure students are on track to completing the 9th grade with at least 5 credits. Research indicates there is a positive correlation between student performance in the freshman year and the likelihood that the student will graduate high school. Third, there continues to be an achievement gap in the performance of students with disabilities versus their general education counterparts. The department continues to emphasize specially designed instruction for all students to address skill deficits. At the elementary level, the special education department developed an ELA instructional guidance document that outlines literacy instruction for students with disabilities and the department's expectation for completing diagnostic and benchmark assessments to inform instruction. Monthly professional development is provided to staff in collecting and analyzing data and delivering high-quality literacy instruction. Finally, the total number of days students with disabilities were suspended increased 3%. The special education department monitors suspensions by tracking monthly data and conducting an internal document review to ensure fidelity of the functional behavior assessments and behavior intervention plans.
Improving literacy and reducing suspensions for students with disabilities were the focus of our 2016-2017 goals. Ames Web benchmarking from 2016 and 17 in grades 1 through 8 indicate growth across all levels. Specifically, 74% of students evidence growth from September to June. MAP-R data in grades 9 through 12 indicate that 63% of students with disabilities made 1 year's growth from September to June. In terms of suspensions, data indicates that we exceeded the state goal by 0.5%. We're on track until a number of suspensions in June pushed us beyond the 2.7% target. Official notification from the State Education Department typically arrives in February, and if it is, that is when we'll know if it's determined that we did not make the mark. In reviewing the data, the following strengths were highlighted. First, out-of-district placements continue to decline. This results in the need for ongoing development of district programs. Second, and as previously mentioned, the classification rate remains under the state average of 14%. Another strength is a decrease in the referrals to special education compared to the previous school year. Medicaid claiming and reimbursement has nearly doubled over the last 2 years based on changes in claiming practices, which were implemented last year. Freshman 5 metrics indicate more students with disabilities are earning course credit in grade 9. Additionally, the high school pass rate for ELA courses has increased across all grade levels and special education programming. And last year, 60 students performed at levels 2, 3, and 4 on the state ELA assessments as compared to 31 students performing at the same levels in the previous year. The data also reveals the following challenges. First, disproportionality remains a concern in terms of referrals, classification, proficiency rates, and suspension. A second area of focus is on curriculum and instruction. Curriculum implementation has been inconsistent across grade levels, and there are fidelity concerns with the administration of district benchmarking assessment tools. A third challenge the department continues to address is closing the achievement gap and increasing student proficiency levels. Another focus is increasing the graduation rate for students with disabilities, which stands at 35%. Finally, a system is needed for consistent monitoring of special education data in order to assess changes and impacts over time.
Thank you. Before I start, I'd like to thank Lori McKenna for presenting with us tonight, and thank Lori and Megan Warren, who's here tonight, and Patricia Wolf for all they've done to help put that beautiful data packet together. So I appreciate all your support. In terms of our goals for 2017-18, based on the review of our data from 16-17, the following goals have been identified. Increased performance on New York State English Language Arts assessments, increased graduation rate, increase the number of students with disabilities meeting the freshman 5 matrix criteria, and reduce the suspension of students with disabilities. Areas and focus and scope of our work. In the areas of teaching and learning, our work will focus on providing staff with the tools to implement systematic, direct instruction with fidelity in order to increase instructional outcomes. It is the expectation that all students with disabilities receive rigorous, research-based instruction and teachers will use data to identify students' strengths and weaknesses to drive instruction. This year, we'll also plan a review of our integrated co-teaching model. In terms of professional development, targeted embedded professional development is provided through the utilization of coaches, behavioral specialists, and the assistive technology specialist. Special class programs for students with significant social-emotional needs is a primary focus for this year. We have an elementary instructional coach who supports teachers in identifying research-based instructional resources and supplementary literacy programs. Additionally, elementary teachers are receiving monthly professional development in the area of literacy from Dr. Lori Strong. Ongoing collaboration with pupil personnel services and the Technical Assistance Center on Disproportionality related to the implementation of behavioral intervention plans, suspension data, and culturally responsive education remain a focus and consideration of the district's disproportionality. Monitoring. A system will be developed to monitor students' absenteeisms, credits earned towards graduation, discipline, and suspensions. Also, the special ed administrators are conducting classroom walkthroughs to inform areas of improvement and growth around the provision of high-quality instruction. Systems and structures. The department will also concentrate on aligning systems and structures by collaborating with the Office of Pupil Personnel Services to redesign therapeutic crisis intervention for schools, otherwise known as TCIS, as well as partnering with the Office of Instruction and Curriculum regarding implementation of instructional ELA, and math materials and assessments. Also, minimizing transitions for students with disabilities along with programming restructuring continues to be a department priority. This year, a Committee on Special Education referral review team was created to review and monitor CSE referrals, as well as provide feedback to schools. Lastly, fiscal responsibilities include ongoing monitoring of federal special education grants, the general budget, and Medicaid reimbursement. For 2018-19, our budget recommendation is an additional instructional coach, specifically to address the needs at the secondary level. That would be to work in all our middle schools and the high school. The coach would provide professional development and embedded training utilizing research-based instructional methods and planning tools. The individual will plan building data team meetings to monitor and review student assessment data, assist teachers in planning for instruction, and monitor IEP goals.
So, as I said earlier, the special education program budget is almost $37 million. It's a lot of money. We need to be accountable and ensure that the programs and services that we are providing indicates a positive return on investment, and if needed, we need to change what we are doing if it's not working. The data dashboard has provided us with access to far more data than we have ever had access to in the past. This has allowed us to review our special education programs at the aggregate level, student subgroup level, by service and individual student. We will continue to look at the data at these levels to direct our systems changes and needs, determine whether or not we are closing the achievement gap and reducing disproportionality, determine if our programs and services are having the intended impact, and whether there is a return on our investment, as well as directing services and interventions based on student data. So the data dashboard will take us through this measuring change for return on investment from the aggregate level, looking at from both the special ed, students with disabilities perspective and general ed, student data by subgroup, data by service. And the data by service is critical because we've never had the ability to look at our data by program, meaning co-teach, resource room, special class, and related services. The way that we've looked at it this year has helped us to identify gaps in our program from curriculum and instruction. And the area that that we mentioned earlier that was really apparent was co-teaching at the middle level. So we will be, in the very near future, conducting an audit in all of our co-teaching classrooms at the middle level. We will continue to drill down to this level based on the data that we are gathering through the data dashboard and make program changes to provide better opportunities for our students with disabilities.
Thank you all very, very much. Appreciate it. I'm going to assume that there may be more questions than we've had thus far this evening. And so to try to strike a balance between the one question that seems draconian and punitive sometimes, on the other hand, which is just asking every question you have, how about we try a question, and if there's a natural follow-up or something like that, let's see how that works this evening in trying to build a better mousetrap. So Ms. Wilson, we'll start on your side.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you so much. I had a few things that came to mind. First, about the ninth grade correlation between entrance into ninth grade and successfully completing high school. Was there any consideration given to some kind of preparation as transitioning into the ninth grade was my initial thing that came to mind, so that they're sort of like a preface to entrance to ninth grade in the middle school level?
So we do have a transition process for our students with disabilities who are shifting from 8th grade at the middle school level to high school. It usually involves a visitation in both directions. So staff from the high school come to the middle school to meet and greet students. They'll sometimes attend the CSE meetings that are happening at annual reviews. And then, of course, students have an opportunity to visit the high school in order to get a sense of not only the building layout, but where their classes might be located, what the structure looks like in terms of the bell schedule, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for shedding light on that for me. We're doing one each.
No, that was just a timing error to my left. Sorry.
And another question I had was, I saw in the presentation there was an identification around June that you were on track to keep the suspensions low, but was there, I'm assuming that was a new phenomenon, or like it just occurred recently, or was that something that trended before? And if not, if it's new, do you have any insight on how you're going to address it next year?
So in terms of the suspensions, that's been an area of focus for us for the last couple of years. This past school year, 15-16, we were underneath the 2.7% target. Over the course of 16-17, we were doing well in terms of the target. And then whether it was changes in routine, field trips, the weather, different things happening within school buildings, which tend to be a little less structured in the last month of school, could have been contributing factors to the increase in suspension, and that's where things kind of fell apart. It could also be changes in the implementation of the code of conduct. So we're definitely looking at that data in more detail as a department and along with the pupil services department to consider how we can address that moving forward.
Mrs. Adams, I know, wanted to weigh in, so.
President Adler, members of the board, Member Wilson. Today we had a meeting with the State Department, and just to address that question, that is one of the specific things that we're going to be looking at moving forward, is that disproportionality and overrepresentation of our special education students in the realm of suspensions. And it's a multi-pronged approach in that we are looking at enhancing the professional development of our teachers, as well as working with our students with regard to their responsibility with their own behavior. And then from a district level, looking at the monitoring of that data and what are the things that we're putting in place that are successful, that are working, so that we can enhance those. And then those things that are not working, looking at letting them go or figuring out why they aren't working so that we can improve those practices.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Dr. Chatur.
That actually took my question, a second question. So I was going to ask about the suspension rate again here. I know that, why is it that that goal wasn't met? I mean, I know that we decreased teachers by about 5 teachers or so, when we increased the TAs by about 20 or so. Is it that the staff, that the TAs don't have do we need more TAs? Do we need more training for the TAs?
So we reduced the teachers by 5.5 for the 16-17 school year. The data, the suspension data that we're talking about is from the 16-17 school year.
Oh, so we actually increased the staff at that point in time?
Correct, yes.
So what is it that is needed? I mean,
President Adler? President
Yes,
Adler,
Mrs.
members of the
Adams.
board, Dr. Chatur. So there are a myriad of concerns within not just special education here in Albany, but just across the United States. We are seeing an escalation in different behaviors that are happening, and so we are trying to keep up with that professional development so that our folks can meet the needs of our students. And so what we are looking to do as we move forward is to make sure that the practices that we are implementing are meeting the needs of our students, because the needs of our students are changing, and we're trying to keep up with the needs that they have.
And just to build on that, when we talk about the suspension rate and the increase in June, this was a spike not only with special education, but with general education as well. So, you know, for a myriad of reasons, we saw a spike. And we are addressing it. We're doing more reteaching of the behavioral expectations throughout the months. And then as we get closer to the summer months, when we seem to see a spike in the behaviors, we'll stress those behavioral expectations even more so.
And it's also along with the administrative training. I didn't want to forget that as well. It's not just our teachers and support staff, it's also our administrators being trained as well.
I mean, throughout the district, you've seen a lot of changes in the last year and a half or so, be it new buildings or more students or more ENL students or so. But I was just trying to see what is it that we're doing, we've been throwing resources at it. Are we throwing the right kind of resources? What is it that we should be thinking going forward towards the budget year and all of those things?
Right, and so this all, are you still talking about suspensions and behavioral expectations? So this
Even
goes
the
up.
graduation rate, right?
Right.
What can we do to improve it?
Yep.
Okay, we are here, but how do we go to the next step?
So, and I'm not sure throwing money at the problem is the solution. I think it's looking at our systems, our expectations, our routines, using data to inform our instruction, and clearly identifying roles and responsibilities for the staff that we currently have in place. And so if you look at our behavior specialist, our social worker, and our psychologist, which comprises our behavioral support team, clearly identify the roles and expectations for that behavioral support team, so we're being proactive rather than reactive and acting in crisis mode. I just use that as an example, but again, putting money to solve a solution isn't the answer. It's really, we have the staff, we have the expertise within our district, we just need to think smarter about how we're using our human and fiscal resources and not increase.
Ms. Lang?
I just want a clarification. When you said that we're at 12.8 for our rate and all district, does that mean we're being compared at the same of all surrounding districts?
Yeah.
So we don't have a different type for poverty or ENL. There's no formula. We are staying at that same level as all of our counter districts.
Right. So the state average is 14.7%, I believe, for identification rate, and ours is a couple percentage points below that. If we get too much lower, the state will ask us why we're under-referring. We're certainly not looking for students to refer, but what that tells us is that our RTI system is working.
And so I guess that's my follow-up, one of my follow-up questions is the referral decrease is because?
RTI, more explicit, direct instruction, and meeting the needs of the students in the general ed setting.
Ms. Roach?
I think I just wanted to begin, at least as my first comment, by following up on that, because when you mentioned the strength, when you did the bullet point of strengths, they were sort of performance-based mixed with fiscal, and it was a bit confusing to me because I guess I'm wondering how having a percentage of students identified with a disability below the state average necessarily tells us that RTI is working and that we're meeting the needs of these students in general education. If there's students in general education that are getting ones on the tests that could be getting 2s or 3s if they had the appropriate services, to me that's not success. So how are we I guess my question is, how are we balancing that, and how are we making sure that all the students that might need these services are being identified?
Yeah, so one data point is not, it's only one data point. And so we need to look at multiple data points in order to determine whether or not our students are making progress. And so when you look at our state testing for ELA or for math, we are shifting in the right direction. And we go back to a couple of data or a couple of presentations ago when we talked about what our data looks like, and we are shifting students out of level 1s and moving them into the higher performing levels of 2s, 3s, and 4s. That's a clear indication that the systems that we have in place to address students' academic needs are working. Do we have a lot more work to do? Absolutely, but we're moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
Ellen, a follow-up? Okay, Vicki?
Sure. Let's see. I'm still a little. I want to go back to disproportionality a little bit. First of all, the classification rate. That's the 12 point. And you said you don't have a breakdown or of how that comes out race-wise, race or gender.
We do. I don't have the data profile in front of me, but I believe we did break it down by race and gender.
Okay. Is that the embargo? Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry. I do have it.
Yeah.
Could I?
If we included all of the data points in the data profile in our presentation, we would be here all night, probably all day
No,
too.
I know, but there are some data points that are really important. But I do remember seeing that. I just wanted to. Okay. Yeah, certain things were embargoed. So,
Mrs. Adams, do you want to just mention, this is embargo data that can't be discussed publicly yet, so that's the only, so it's in the administrative section, and there was certain data that, okay.
Regents data.
Okay, let me ask. Let me come at it a little differently.
Wait a second, just a second.
Oh, sorry.
So, Mrs. Adams, if you could just, in a sentence or two, for those, we as a board know what the concept of embargo data means. So, and people know that there is an administrative section on board docs in which documents that eventually, hopefully, make it to the public, except for things like tenure and specific student and personnel information, can go out. But embargo data is of a certain kind of ilk.
Madam President, members of the board, Member Smith, some of the information that you're requesting at this point is embargoed, which means that we cannot share it in a public forum until the state officially releases that information.
Okay, so could I ask this another way? And has the pattern continued, let's say, over the last 3 years? Are we still seeing a high rate of classification of students based on their race or their gender or whatever? Just want to, yeah.
I'm going to take it out of the realm of special education right now because not just in the City School District of Albany, but across the country, we are seeing different subgroups with higher representation for suspensions and disciplinary infractions. And does that subgroup include special education? Yes, it does.
But
Sorry, I'm really talking also about classification.
Yeah, and I'll answer that question.
Yeah.
So we have not been identified for disproportionality with classification.
Okay.
We have been identified for disproportionality for suspensions.
Okay, so that classification rate is lower than.
Yes.
Okay. There was something that your last quote, lack of quality reading instruction cannot be used as a criteria for special education. So I don't know whether that was like a hint or clue. Is that what's happening?
No, we're moving in the right direction. We have, at the elementary level, we have the K through 2 early literacy initiative, and we're moving in the right direction. But historically, we
That's
have,
what I wanted to,
right.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
But we have more work to do, and I would argue that every teacher in this district needs to be a teacher of reading, and we're not there yet.
Wait, just one more. Thank you. And there was a lot of commotion around my first question, so. I wanted to ask you this. Well, I get a number of calls from families whose children have or are about to graduate, and for them, they feel like they don't know what's next for my child. And so I just wanted to ask if you could expand a little bit on the, I know there's an initiative with SAGE, right, where youngsters are, but I don't know how large a number that is. And in general, what kind of pathways do we have for students who are special needs after they leave our system?
Sure. In terms of our SAGE program, it's a collaborative classroom, and it's held over at SAGE. Ms. Adler was at the graduation this year. This year there's about 6 students there, and we have a special ed teacher and a teacher assistant. Those are students that are ages 19, 20, and 21. So what we wanted to do is give them that college experience. All the students are identified as students that are eligible for New York State alternate assessment. So those students are not Regents or local diploma bound. At the high school, we have 2 transition coordinators. So in the senior year, the students sit down at their annual review meeting, and the transition coordinators have been working with those students throughout the 4 years of high school to determine options and post-secondary options, career options. So we've been very successful in working on finding students enrolling in college and post-secondary opportunities, as well as career opportunities. I know our transition coordinators have doing a lot of great work in during the course of the year, finding employment opportunities for our students also. So they're out there in some school to work opportunities during the course of the year.
Are we on? There we go. I was going to say, too, just as a follow-up, the transition plan even starts in middle school. The year that the student turns 15 in our district policy, we like to say about 8th grade, is where we formally start these discussions about what are your post-secondary interests, and we expect it to change because people change. A student may want to be a basketball player one day and, who knows, a movie star the next. And as we have an annual review meeting every year, we orient our services and our present levels towards that student's post-secondary goal. So let's say I want to pursue a career in banking, but I have weak math skills. Well, my transition goals are, improving my math skills so I can pursue that career. Attend a 4-year or 2-year college with an accounting degree. So you might see that theme is woven throughout our IEPs. And I would also just note that this past school year, the district, or rather the special education department, we were reviewed on indicator 13, which is our transition indicator, to have the necessary components throughout our IEP to show that we are supporting transition, and we did have a compliance rate of 100%.
Ms. Savage.
One of the questions I always have is how the communication with parents works. One of the points of concern that's often raised with board members is that parents don't know if their IEP is being followed. They don't feel confident that their IEP is being followed. And I'm curious whether under your systems and structures area of focus, one of the systems and structures that you're interested in working on is some mechanism for having a cycle of information back and forth to parents so that they could feel more confident that their IEP is being followed between mid-year, between the actual meeting.
That's something that we can certainly look to add, because as a department, we have many things that we'll be reviewing.
And part of our priorities for monitoring is the monitoring of the IEP implementation, and certainly that includes communication.
I just want to add that on a quarterly basis, we report out to families with progress on student goals. So that's definitely an indicator as to whether or not IEPs are being implemented. One of the key initiatives that we've had over the last couple of years has been progress monitoring of IEP goals. So there's an expectation that not only will they get a narrative summary of how their students doing in relation to their progress on the goal, but they'll also be able to see evidence of that progress in the form of data. And certainly at any time, if a parent has a question or a concern about what's happening with their student's IEP, they can contact us for a meeting at any time.
I think parents do know that, but I think what I'm looking for is more of a proactive approach of, you know, your IP calls for X number of visits with a physical therapist over the course of a month, and validating that that's actually happening proactively rather than having to wait for a parent to express a concern that it's not happening. Let's make that, and I realize that that's not an easy lift with the number of special ed students we have.
No, it's not, but I want to just let you know, a system that we put in place with our quality assurance manager is all students, special education students, regardless of whether they're Medicaid eligible or not, we are mandating that they prepare electronic session notes. So we will be able to monitor whether or not sessions, whether it's for speech and language, counseling, et cetera, are being completed and in compliance with the student's IEP. So that's huge. We are auditing that. Megan Warren, our quality assurance manager, is neutral between the special education department and the PPS department. Social workers fall over in the PPS department with counseling, and the speech and language over in the special ed side of things. So we are monitoring that. We did recognize that not all sessions were being completed per the IEP, so now we have a system built in where we are auditing on a regular basis whether or not the number of services per week, for example, are being completed.
Okay, thank you. That was great to hear. Very, very good to hear. Ms. Wilson.
Just about your proposal for next steps and the addition of a additional coach. I found that to be sort of like a promising discussion, especially considering, Lori, you alluded to the need for us to be agile and flexible in our approach and things of that nature. So I wanted to remark on that. I don't know if you have any more, like if you wanted to expand on it or not, but that's one part that I found very promising.
On the co-teach model? Yeah, so when we started to look at the data, whether it was the 3 through 8 testing, course pass rate, and course pass rate can be somewhat subjective depending on the classroom teacher providing the grade for that course. We noticed some trends around the co-teach model, specifically at the middle level. So we are, there are some rubrics that we will be using to go in and evaluate what is happening in the co-teach classrooms at the middle level and evaluate the effectiveness. And I'll keep going back to that return on investment. And is the co-teach model at the middle level specifically having an impact on students? Because we should see similar course pass rates in a co-teach classroom between general ed and special ed. And there's a pretty big discrepancy. So we're working on that. We also know that there are some professional development needs with our general ed teacher and our co-teacher, our special ed teacher in that co-teach model. So we're looking at some models, turnkey trainer models, to send a team or a cadre of staff to be trained in co-teaching, and then turnkey our general ed teacher and our special ed teacher in that co-teach model.
So I didn't ask a question, but I'm just going to jump, because the question I would have is, it felt counterintuitive to me upon reading all the special ed work that you presented to us, that the co-teach would be the weak link. It felt, you know, if I had to have guessed, I would have thought the co-teach performance would have actually been the higher performing. Are you able to articulate why you think that is where you found that the work was, that the product or the outcomes were actually lower?
Until we really get into those classrooms and really see what's happening, I mean, I can make some assumptions on what I believe may be happening. I think the general ed teacher and the special education teacher haven't had training in what it means to be co-teachers. And so what sometimes happens is that one of the teachers out of the two is not providing that direct instruction and is more of a support in the classroom than a co-teacher. Another hunch that I have is around the planning between the co-teacher or between the special ed teacher and the general ed teacher, which is having an impact on the quality of instruction in that co-teach model. But those would be the two things that I would look for when we go in and we do our audit of the co-teach model.
Mrs. Adams?
President Adler, members of the board, one of the other things that we need to also look at is as we begin to examine and analyze that co-teach model, we also have to look at consistency, because even when the results come back from student performance, one group of co-teachers may be outstanding, another group of co-teachers may need a little bit more training, some may have had more administrative support, some may have not, some of the supervisors may have been in. There are multiple measures that may determine higher or lower success of our students in a co-teach model. And so before we get ahead of ourselves, I'd like for us to be able to have that opportunity to do our walkthroughs, to work with our staff, and have that qualitative and quantitative feedback with regard to what some of those disconnects may be.
Thank you. That's
one of the things that I'm really excited about through Ken's department is the ability to look at the level of data that we need to look at in order to make informed decisions. Last year, we couldn't have this conversation with you, but because we have been able to take the information from our management system for our students with disabilities and that monitors and stores our IEPs and connect it to our student management system, we're able to add the program level data into our student management system, which allows us to drill down to the program level.
Thank you. Dr. Chator, sorry to interrupt.
I mean, this goes for any student, but especially for the special ed students, even if their test scores are improving, are we making sure that it's the whole child that is improving, that they still get the protective, the wraparound services that they might need outside of just passing the test or getting that educational component, the social emotional part of it?
So the quick answer is yes.
Okay.
So regardless of whether they're special education or general education, whether or not they have counseling on their IEP or whether they don't, if a student needs some social and emotional support, we will work with the school, the families to get the permissions to provide that level of social and emotional support to the child. So absolutely.
I was actually going to talk about something else, but I just wanted to continue that conversation. So I've heard this on more than one occasion that when a new parent, new kid gets diagnosed and they have the meeting with the committee, it's sort of intimidating. You got like a whole bunch of people from the district side, and here's the parent who's already not knowing what to do. Can we do something to make it a more supportive interaction? So it's not an us versus them. I don't know what to do, and here's all these people telling me what I should be doing, rather than, we want to work with you.
No, that's a great kind of situation that you bring up, and certainly I know that when I'm chairing meetings and I can sense a parent's, just whether it's scared or ambivalence or what is this process all about. First of all, I think just acknowledging, like, you as a parent, you're the expert on your child. Even though there's this evaluation that has these diagnoses, or yes, the teachers see them, 6-7 hours a day. But I think first of all, acknowledging the parent is always the expert on their child. They have the PhD in the room when it comes to their child. I think sometimes there's a lot of different factors and ways that we try to make parents feel included, whether it's you enter a room and it's, spacing the district employees out so it's not us versus them. You think about just physical proximity and space can create, this barrier. Certainly prior to the meeting, we've had ongoing conversations from the time that there's been a request for an evaluation. There's been contact right off the bat. The evaluators, the school psychologist who completes that comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation, they reach out to the parent prior to the meeting. There's just a lot of new terminology and just discussion to be had. So certainly there's been ongoing conversation prior to that. take a lot of measures to make sure that parents are going to be able to participate in a meeting and ideally participate in person, because we know communication in person is much different than communication over a phone. So we definitely try to take all these measures to make sure we are including parents and that they're truly informed.
President Adler, members of the board, Dr. Chatur, the process in and of itself, and I will say this as a superintendent and having been one of the co-teachers and working and supervising special education for numerous years, it is an intimidating process. And much of it is mandated by law and by procedures. What we as a district can do is we can work on those soft skills, the same things that were just mentioned. A way of saying it is that those soft skills are going to make a difference. And so for us to take your comments under consideration and make sure that we are absolutely talking with the facilitators of those meetings, which are absolutely intimidating, because as a parent, you walk into a room and there's roughly 10 mandated people that have to be there at the same time. And so with that in and of itself, then we have to do our due diligence with addressing those soft skills and building those relationships with parents as we move forward.
Thank you.
Ms. Lang?
I want to build on Shradar's, but I have another question as well. I want to talk about translation for the parents who do not speak English. How does that work when a parent is trying to get maybe services or has services? What is the likelihood that a translator will be in that room, or how does that work?
Translators are always requested in advance of meetings, as well as translations of documented materials. So evaluations are sent out for translation in advance of meetings. IEP documents are sent out following meetings to ensure that parents have a record of everything that was discussed. Anything that they require to be translated along the way, we can certainly provide for, but we make absolutely every effort to ensure that we have translators present because we're not able to move forward without them.
And so my question, that was just a follow-up to the soft skills and making sure. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on the consultant teacher. Is that something that you've had for a long time? It's just one of the first time that I've seen it broken down. And
No, it's always been an option on the continuum. Not many students have just consultant teacher services because that's really minimal level support. So that might be combined with related services or a resource room, but consultant services are really on the least restrictive end of the continuum. So we have a few students that receive that level of support. Many of the students in the night school program receive consultant services because of the variety of needs in the night school and the different levels all the students are at. We have special ed teachers there that are always checking in with the teachers and providing that level of support. So the majority of the students that receive consultant services are in our night school program.
So a student would have the consultant teacher reach out to them to say, "Hi, I'm your consultant teacher," and then that parent, would that be the parent's direct link
Yes.
to the services? So
Yes, that would be the case manager of the IEP.
that's
Would be
kind of like
yes, yeah.
the case manager. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Roach?
Thanks. You know, Ms. Savage asked the question that I'd wanted to ask, and I was really thrilled to hear your answer. I remember the first question I think I asked as a board member about 2 years ago was how do you ensure that your IEPs and your 504s are being consistently implemented, and that the answer was very different this time than 2 years ago. You know, and indicated yes, we do monitor for compliance. That was fantastic, and I was very happy to see the hiring of the quality assurance manager, and I'm glad to see that type of work is being done. I'd also encourage, and it looks like this might be happening, in that the quality assurance manager is also overseeing the processing of requests for new referrals. But I hope that we're making sure that the time frames, which I know are statutory, but again, compliance with those statutory deadlines, making sure things don't get, especially when different referrals to different people go out there and sort of get lost, and kid can get lost for a few months. The other thing I wanted to kind of ask is, are we I understand that I think parents can ask for another parent to be present at the IEP meetings. Is that something that we're facilitating? Is that something that we have a group of parents that are willing to participate in? How is that working out?
Yeah, we maintain a list of parent members. We're always seeking additional parent members if anybody's interested. But at any time, a parent can certainly bring a friend, family member, other professional that they may know
I think I was
personally.
asking how often is that being requested?
Oh. It's not a high frequency request. I'd say probably over the course of the year, probably less than 10 requests per year for a parent member. I think the challenge with a parent member is it's somebody that the parent doesn't necessarily know in advance, so they're meeting them, you know, within a day or right at the meeting, depending on what people's availability is. So that can be challenging. More often than not, we see families bringing, you know, their own friends, family members, or professionals.
Thanks.
I was going to say, if anything, the district or the department, we have more requests for a parent advocate. A lot of families are seeking, you know, how do I go about contacting a parent advocate? So we provide resources for them and phone numbers, and we have some agencies that work a lot within our district, and they're well known. So I would say that there are a lot of requests for parent advocates.
And may I ask one more question? It's about the part where you said that there's limited availability locally for some of the services that we need, I think for some of the off-campus services, and you were talking about potentially having Albany develop some of those services in the district. Is that something, because it's talking about future plans, is that something that you can talk more about? Is that something that we could bring in students from other districts if we were to develop a program for students with maybe,
No, I'm looking at
I think severe behavioral
Lori,
issues,
because I think the
maybe? I don't
challenge
know.
has been finding the space, is where we would, you know, where would we have those classrooms? Because right now, to even open another special ed classroom, it was a challenge this year to, we opened 3 additional kindergarten classrooms, and it was a challenge going through buildings and finding the space for the programs. It would be great to have the students, you know, in district, but at this time, I think it'd be a bigger conversation.
But one of the things I do want to mention, I don't know if we mentioned it earlier, but I think we did put it in our program review, is we successfully realigned continuums of program within each of our elementary and middle schools, which means we're limiting the number of transitions for our most at-risk student population. And so just to give you an example, School A had a K-1 classroom, self-contained classroom, and maybe a 2-3. The following year, due to space, they had to go to another elementary school for the 4-5 program. So we were able to realign our special ed classes, self-contained classes, and have strands within each of our elementary schools. That was critical to supporting our students with disabilities.
Ms. Smith. Ms. Savage?
I'll just ask a quick follow-up on that. So is that work essentially done? Like the strands are all good, we're solid, we're not doing that anymore? We're not moving kids? Okay. So then my last question is, you mentioned in one of your slides a concern about fidelity of assessments, and I wondered if you could expand on that a little bit more.
Great question. So as you know, for our state assessments, there's a 2-prong test in order to make adequate yearly progress. It's performance on the actual assessment, so you know, levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then there's also that requirement of testing 95% or more of our students at the all student level and also at our subgroup level. What we were noticing when we were reviewing the data is that not all of our students with disabilities were being tested using AIMSweb and NWEA. So now we have a data dashboard that will help us to monitor and use that same standard of 95%, because we do have some students with disabilities who are severely cognitively disabled and do not meet that requirement to take those tests that I just mentioned. And so we are carefully monitoring, because we did recognize that not all of our students with disabilities were being assessed using AIMSweb and NWEA. which meant that we weren't getting a true read on the performance of our students with disabilities. So we have put that safeguard in place for that.
So when we assess our students with special needs, do we assess them at a level that is appropriate for their level? You understand my question?
I do. So, so the short answer is yes. Do you want a long answer?
I guess I want a little bit more than yes. I mean, I want to make medium, because the night is getting late, but what I'm trying to get at is that nothing that we're doing for our students is cruel and unnecessary, right? These are children, and they should be assessed at a level where they're able to show some
We are testing them at their
success.
instructional level.
So, Debbie?
Can I just mention too, our elementary special ed teachers have been working with Dr. Lori Strong, and one of the first trainings they received this year was reviewing all the assessments and making sure they were able to conduct those assessments. Our elementary instructional coach, Eileen, is here tonight, and she's very busy visiting all the elementary school teachers and always sending out blasts to them. Do you need help? I'll come help you, ensuring that all our students have, and we're monitoring, you know, hey, you haven't tested so-and-so, or haven't done the progress monitoring. So she's doing a great job in staying on top of our teachers and really providing that and embedded support if they need it, because they've had the training, and that's why Dr. Strong, it's important that she's coming back every month to meet with the teachers to address their concerns, because now that they have the data, we want them to be able to use it.
So I wanted to thank you very much on behalf of the board for the presentation, and to just tell you that one of the things that I really appreciate very much personally, having been through a lot of presentations on special ed over the years, is the level of candor with which you've addressed what is, as we know, not the strongest programmatic piece, through no fault of anybody. It's just not criticism of anything, like the question on co-teach, is just that it requires teaming. And so if we haven't helped people and given them the support on how to team with coming from two different places, special ed and general ed, then that, you know, is our responsibility to provide that. So thank you for presenting not just the data, but answering the questions with such candor, having us be partners in a sense of hearing where we're at, where we've been, and where we're going, and understanding, I think, and I speak only but looking at nods, but that there is attention to this very important, because it's our children, right, students with disabilities, that hasn't always gotten the level of attention that it needs to be given. And students with disabilities have, as we've talked about, an ability throughout the country to actually make great strides, and the fact that that's a commitment and shown through the actual attention and honesty, because without that, there's no way to improve. So thank you very, very much for presenting in that way this year, and I really it's a great appreciation.
President Adler, members of the board, I want to say thank you very much for acknowledging the hard work of our special ed department, as well as the leadership of Ms. McKenna. Thank you so very much.
And now we're up to ENL/translation services. Thank you again. Good evening.
Good evening. If we may, we have a short summer school presentation prepared for you. Mr. Finn, our ENL summer program coordinator, has prepared for us, and then we certainly can take any questions, and then I'll get into my full ENL program review, if that's okay with you guys.
Of course.
Thank you to the board for your interest in the summer school program. Thank you to Tom and Lori for helping me prepare this short presentation this evening. Do you want to go to the next page? So Thank you so much. We ran what we were calling a newcomer summer program for the past couple of years. We expect that title may change with the new Albany International Center. At the time, summer 2017, we ran this 4-week program called Newcomer Summer Program. It ran from July 5th to August 4th. It's quite brief, but great little program. And we had to prioritize who could be in the program because we had 120 slots and we had so many new ENL students arriving. We had over 200 that could have qualified for the slots. So in order to winnow down the number of students for the number of seats, we created some criteria. Firstly, they were students who were not in a U.S. school for over a year. So they had to have been here for under 1 year. They would have tested at the entering or formerly known as beginner level on their initial assessment. And they would have been assessed through interviews and through transcripts and through other means as having a gap of at least 2 years in their formal education before arriving. And then there were some advocates for children who might have arrived just about 1 academic year ago and said, well, you know, they could have maybe squeaked into the last week of last year's newcomer summer, or maybe they did, so that would have disqualified them this year. So we wanted only children who hadn't had that opportunity to have that opportunity this year. So where are we? So the main impetus of the program, of course, was to further these children's ability in listening comprehension, speaking, reading comprehension, and writing. Some children had been in the district for maybe 8 months, maybe close to the 9 months. Some were arriving during summer 2017, so it was a wide spectrum of kids, and they had differing abilities and different contact with the English language. This is our overview of enrollment. As you can see, I won't go over the numbers here. These were the class sizes. We broke them up. We had 8 teachers for the program, so we broke them up this way. And the total enrollment at the end, we did accept some of the very new students. We started with 120. We ended up with 131. This was the staff that we had. We had the 8 full-time teachers, a bilingual teaching assistant. She is bilingual in English and Arabic. We had 1 full-time equivalent nurse, 1 bilingual social worker who's bilingual in English and Spanish, 2 hall monitors, a bilingual homeschool coordinator who's bilingual in English and Karen. So we had a lot of different languages already on our staff. And then there's me, program coordinator. Our total budget to begin was $110,927. We ended up coming a little bit under budget. Some of the areas went a little above, some went below. A couple of areas I was very, very keen to cut down on using substitutes, so we didn't really touch that funding as much. So that's how we ended up with those budget numbers. Strengths of the program: students were very enthusiastic and motivated learners. The teachers noted growth in the students' abilities in English. Students grew in social participation and the ability to cooperate with others. And some of the challenges were some practical things we discovered at the end of the spring, that the YMCA contract didn't cover us for gym and pool use, which we had kind of promoted as something that would happen. But the YMCA attached to the school has a contract for per use, and we were told by the Y we weren't covered for the months of July and August. What I did was I kind of negotiated some use. I went back to them and said, well, you know, we need to all kind of volunteer as a community. Can I get some volunteer swim coach time? We ended up having about 4 swim sessions and some time in the gym in the end, which was basically donated by the Y. It would be nice to have it, the contract really covering us, though. Students some of the students really needed more time with interpreters, and that was another challenge that we had. Attendance ran about 80% over the 4 weeks. Students in the very new situations were needing to move around and find a place to live, and within all that, they were able to come to the program 80% of the time on average, so that was great. Teachers used different grading rubrics throughout the program. I would say most teachers ran grades about once a week, at least, and so most of the students exceeded expectations of their teachers. And I did have a couple sample rubrics, but we're not going to bore you with that, so we'll go right to the numbers. This is how students performed on the rubrics provided by their teachers. So kids were doing very well according to the expectations of what the teachers were hoping for. And then we had some qualitative projects that we wanted to see happening a couple times throughout the 4 weeks, and certainly by the end. And we're just showing a couple of the different projects that students did. We're very happy to do them, and we showed them off at the end of the program. Recommendations for the following summer. Certainly we would want to extend the Y contract to cover the usage in July and August instead of having to negotiate and whine and cry and get them to donate time. Provide access to laptop cart, increase field trip funding. We were hoping to take them to Howe Caverns for kind of a scientific geological exploration, but it turned out to be a little bit out of our price range. And we'd also like to see an increase of staff if possible, because we didn't really have anybody to provide specials like music and art, and certainly if the Y is going to be open to us, we would need PD, and here's the cost of what that would be. And now I'm open for questions.
Yes, so why don't we start this time with Ms. Roach?
I know, I just want to say thank you for the presentation. It sounds like it's a wonderful experience for these youngsters.
Thank you.
Ms. Lang?
Hello. So I was wondering if there were some kind of metrics. Were kids coming in not knowing any English and learning their ABCs, or how was that kind of structured?
Yes, it was kind of a mix. So we do the initial state assessment called the NICETEL, and all of these students had tested as real beginners on the NICETEL. Some students are coming from linguistic environments where either they were not getting any kind of education, any formal education in their home language, therefore their literacy was basically in some cases non-existent, and then some did have some literacy education in their home language. So this is the struggle that we have as ENL teachers to kind of figure out where students are so that we can support them properly. But certainly there was a mix of students with limited access to literacy education and students who had had some in their home language. There was virtually no knowledge of English with the students who came in throughout the year, but if you had been here, if you were a student who was here and got here in October, let's say, then you would have been stronger than someone who got here in May coming into the program. Does that answer the question?
I think, if I can say what I think Jim was asking is, did you do an assessment at the beginning and at the end to see growth? Was that what you were asking?
We didn't have a specific assessment at the beginning of the 4 weeks, no. We relied on the assessment that happened in the the NICETEL enrollment, and a lot of the seats were filled by teacher recommendation, so we didn't have a data piece on that.
Then I guess I'll ask, was there a mission for the summer school? So what was the purpose, I guess, of the summer school program?
Yeah, if I could just add, so in past practice over the years, we've tried to say, okay, in 4 weeks, we're going to increase F&P levels by 12% or some really sharp metric like that. And to be quite candid with you, I don't think we ever realized that specific metric. So in reflecting on what we have done in the past, knowing that we were going to be gearing up for we didn't know what we were going to call it then, but the International Center, we really wanted to focus on, as Matthew had described, as true newcomers coming that really actually were, many of them were SIFE students and that's students with interrupted formal education, to make sure that they have a positive school experience, and that is definitely more qualitative than quantitative from that lens. But we wanted to make sure that students understood what school expectations were. They were exposed to some PBIS lessons that we had. And as Matthew had alluded to before, trying to have more of a whole child approach in terms of making sure that they get excited about what school is for them and that it's positive and that they can carry that when they go to their home school. And so we did do some surveys as we have done in the past, and that was our one hard metric, I guess you could say, and that's all about, well, how are our customers, our community, our parents, how are they feeling about the experience that their kids are having, and that was overwhelmingly positive.
Dr. Chator?
Thank you for the presentation. My question is more in terms of, can you tell us more about what kind of outreach you have for this program? Like, how do people find out about it? Is it just the kids get a letter and you're going to summer school, or is there active enrollment? Because some of the barriers in summer, I mean, we've talked about this in other summer school programs as well, where mom and dad are working, so the older kid has to watch his or her siblings. So that could, how do we address some of those things and try to alleviate them in the future?
We had an invitation process. The students were selected as being very needing the program by their teachers based on the criteria that I mentioned. So within those criteria, the teachers were selecting the kids, but we made a distinct attempt not to break up families. So that was another piece of the puzzle that we worked on putting together. We put together the class lists. It took several months, actually. But one of the things that we tried to make sure to do, and I think we were pretty successful, was not to break families up so that parents could take care of what they needed to do and kids were not separated from their siblings. If one was identified as being a perfect candidate for the school and the other was sailing along, we tried to get both of those kids in so that the families wouldn't be split up over the summer.
And specifically, I do want to give Matthew a shout out in terms of using an asset-based model, and that's a common theme that you will be hearing throughout my department in the upcoming years. And what I mean by that is letters and phone calls home congratulating parents that their children are eligible for this program versus like, oh, you have to go to summer school. And we would do that with contact, either home visits in the native language, phone calls in the native language, inviting them. But again, I don't want to be casual about how we did it. As Matthew said, we could have had many more students participate. So we had to take a look at the data, and that would be the NWEA, AIMSweb, the NICETEL data, take a look at it and see which one of groupings of those kids are most kids in need of this service. And then from there, those teachers made recommendations, and from there, we sent the letters out congratulating parents on the opportunity.
Ms. Wilson.
Thank you. Question about the more or less like a supply and demand question, because this is a population we anticipate exponential growth. Do you have a strategic plan? Because what you alluded to in the beginning of the presentation was there was an excessive demand, or there was more people who could have or wanted to be in the program that you were able to allow in.
Yes, and actually Matthew and I debriefed, and obviously we brought Rachel, the new principal for the International Center, and I've had some conversations with Ms. McKenna about this. So now that we actually have the Albany International Center running for 6 through 12, we want to focus on our intermediate level L's, because now we have a year-long program for 6 through 12. As you know, we get children all throughout the year. It's not like we just get them in August. So we're feeling really good that now we have this, research-based optional transition pathway to high school graduation program for those kids. So now, how are we going to incorporate, or what are we going to do about those intermediate or even higher functioning long-term L's that for whatever reason haven't been responding or they haven't tested out of E&L services? And it's all about high school graduation. So we will be working with Dr. Wilson Turner on integrating what our summer programming looks like and having our L's and some of our resources deployed in what that summer programming looks like to support the intermediate L's, so to speak.
And just piggybacking on that, I saw that even though you did absorb the field trips into the transportation costs, it seemed to exceed what you anticipated. So I don't know if that had anything to do with the demand for the program or the amount of children you had to serve.
No, the budget lines were separate and they were coming from different funding. So there were different budget lines for staff that were established and different for transportation and field trips.
Ms. Smith. No question on the transportation. Ms. Savage? So I just had, my first question was actually what was asked over here, which was to find out if you had sort of an overriding principle, because as we learned maybe a couple of years ago when we started to move into a summer school setting where we understood that the work we were doing was more realistic, was stopping loss, and then if we could also accelerate, that would be great as well, and all of that. So it sounds like the summer school program, when you said kids who were in need of service, is that another way of saying who you found to be maybe most at risk?
Yeah, so specifically speaking, the kids with diagnosed post-traumatic stress, and obviously there's not a lot of those clinicians in their native land to actually even give them a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress, and all that encompasses that. And we are seeing some of that manifest itself this fall in the Albany International Center. Luckily, we do have the supports there to deal with it. So yes, it's all about high school graduation and literacy, but we need the foundation of social emotional supports so that kids are feeling safe and that those basic needs are being met, so then they can have that opportunity to learn. And so Matthew's program really focused on that whole child, making sure that that was identified, and we're able to get some great data points that when these kids went to their 18 different schools this fall, they're actually ahead of the game because now we had some information on how we could support them moving forward. And again, it was a transitional year because the previous year we didn't have the Albany International Center. Now we do have the Albany International Center, and we will be shifting our focus now as we start to plan, even right now for next summer, with perhaps more of an academic theme for those intermediate L's now that we have the International Center.
And I understand that, and I appreciate it, because one of the things that only concern when we're looking at funding is if it's not targeted to a really coherent idea of what you hope to achieve, then in a summer school setting for 4 or even 6 weeks, it doesn't really work. So I'm actually not speaking negatively. If you were to share with us that you thought the program was more, and I don't mean camp pejoratively, but a sense that you're taking kids who might otherwise we'd lose in the system, and you're kind of doing a stopgap measure to ensure that we don't lose them and that they stay in school, something as even, sort of simple as that. And so it's helpful that you're at least cordoning off that it's the middle L's that you would then go academically with. I would be concerned as to whether or not we'd be able to see the kinds of, the amount of money we'd have to put in to do academics for what you did this summer would seem to be really very almost prohibitive for a summer school setting, because if you're working on keeping families together and you're working on kids who are really at risk, where they are academically and where they are in terms of needs are so all over the place, it almost would feel like they'd each need their own academic work. So it's helpful to know that that's something that you take into consideration when you come to give us what your program is for next year, what your program funding is. Is that something that you have a handle on yet? Because you gave us the program review, and are you sort of set on where your dollars and cents are yet as to what we should be looking at?
We're not set yet in terms of an exact number, but proportionately, we're looking about the same amount dedicated for next year. But again, it is going to be a large shift for my department where we're not necessarily going to have our own newcomer summer program necessarily. Rather, we're going to make sure that we're processing kids, getting them ready for some of our other programming, but rather we want to really try and close that opportunity gap, right, for our Ls in that traditional setting. And so I will have a board update for you once we start getting more detailed on that plan.
Great, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. I forgot, now we're on to the other part of the program.
So I just wanted to again thank the board, cabinet, Superintendent Adams for your time. I know it's been a long day for us. I am really excited about this presentation, regardless of the hour right now. And so I'm going to walk you through really a comprehensive plan in terms of where are we at right now, where are we going to be going over the next 3 years. So if we take a look at what the program is comprised of right now, we have the director, 36 ENL teachers spread throughout the 18 buildings, one ENL bilingual intake coordinator who is a certified ENL teacher at the registration, one clerk typist. And then I delineate, because then we now have our Albany International Center with our own principal, clerk typist, 7 area content teachers, an additional 7 ENL teachers, a designated art teacher, PE teacher, 1 homeschool coordinator, again, she's quadlingual, 1 ENL bilingual social worker, and 1 school nurse. And some other things that, again, we've talked about before with my program with CR 154 coming into play in 2015. I have way more details for us, and hopefully you have a copy of the detailed program review. Some of it should look familiar, but some of those big key chunks of the law to keep in mind as we be very purposeful with our programming are registration. What does our registration process look like? There's 5 levels of service with corresponding minutes and programming requirements that need to be in place. There's the 2 contiguous grade levels. We cannot service Ls in any more than 2 contiguous grade levels in a setting. Language of preference, I think I heard some reference during Mrs. Sharp's presentation on how are we making sure that, because my department touches every department, right? So how are we ensuring that the language of preference, and that's how the law is written, how is the language of preference clearly being communicated and empowered for our families? And really interesting dynamic to 154 in that a minimum of 50% of the ENL teacher schedule needs to be in that push-in or integrated or co-teach model moving forward. So the 17-18 budget, total budget, a little over 4.8 million. And then that's separate from the Title III grants, which we have broken down into immigrant and what is really an antiquated term that I hope the state will change, and that's limited English proficiency, the LEP it's still referred to as. That last bullet I do want to talk a little bit about, and that is transportation. And I have been working with members of cabinet and Mrs. Stead over at the Albany International Center, because we do believe that it is something that is to be considered for a policy update or review in terms of equity in treating students differently so then they can then be treated the same. Well, what does that look like actually in our practice? In terms of transportation, we might have to rethink, for lack of a better term, kind of blanket transportation policy for us when we have our newcomers that are new to the country, new to the city, what that looks like for busing with the older kids taking the CDTA bus.
Do you mind, Mr. Giglio, just 1 second about, I just want to make sure that everybody on the board is clear that there's some very specific state laws about how we must treat everyone the same, not equitably, but equally, which bind the hands of the school board in terms of making some of those changes. And I don't disagree with you that some of them would be beneficial, but I hope that in your recommendations, Mr. Hogan is looking at the transportation policy right now as we speak. So this is your timely, but we need to be really
Yes.
tuned into the legal specific.
And also the funding, I'm very cognizant of what the funding ramifications could be for that. However, I think that this subpopulation that is so new and it's such a growth area for us, I think maybe perhaps some of the litigation hasn't caught up.
We completely agree with you and suggest you lobby your state legislature to see if we can get some relief from the very rigid requirements in the state law around transportation.
Thanks. So moving forward. Our data trends, I think I heard some board members reference earlier that we know that it's on the increase, and we take a look at, this is a graph that I typically have shown you over the past few years, and it does continue to increase as we are now over servicing 1,300 Ls in the city. And I do want to make a few points to that. We have started to experience something called secondary migration, and what that means is, yes, we still get a tremendous influx, and we are, as you well know, a federal relocation city here in Albany. So we still get many of our newcomers coming either from refugee camps or from whatever geopolitical region that they're coming from. However, we have also noticed that we are getting a secondary migration, meaning maybe folks from Mississippi or Illinois or some other states for a variety of reasons are coming to New York, and they're coming to Albany in particular. And I would suspect that my hypothesis is that we really have built some really fairly dynamic academic as well as social emotional supports in conjunction with really the whole city being a welcoming city, so to speak. And so that's something obviously we're proud of. We believe it's a great asset for us, but it's something for us to think about as we move forward. And hot off the press, a federal judge in Hawaii has blocked the third attempt for a ban. Obviously, that's going to head down to a more formal litigation. But moving forward, we really don't see that really impacting our flow of Ls coming to us. The next slide, I have a graph for you just so you could take a look at. So we know we have a lot of Ls and they're growing, but who are they? Where are they coming from? What does it look like? Language is spoken. And it's really such a fascinating position that I have because it's so fast moving. And so as you can take a look, again, the thing that I would point out is, depending on how you categorize it, we have 55 to 57 languages spoken any day here really in the city in our schools. But I also like to look at trending data. And so just recently we did have Arabic surpass Spanish as our #1 language, along with Pashto, Farsi, Dari, Swahili, and Kinyarwanda are on the way up. However, the other data point that I'd like you to take a look at is the upper left-hand corner of the slide where it says other, and that would be like the other 40 languages, and so it's over like 13%. So what that looks like for us is a challenge in terms of making sure that we're working with our interpretation company, and I'm going to talk a little bit later about some technology that we're starting to incorporate so that when we say the language of preference, that could be one of 57 languages that we have to make sure we're either having in written or oral communication for our families moving forward. So every year we come, I do a program review, I tell you about my goals, I ask for money, and we try and move forward. So I was reflecting, and okay, how can I try and be a little bit more poignant and powerful with my presentation? So why don't we follow up with like my goals from previous years as it related to resources that you gave us, and where are we at with that? So obviously, we've talked about the then newcomer program, which we now call the Albany International Center. That's up and running, and obviously that was a huge focal point for us over the past few years. We also had a goal of culturally competent teacher in every room. We attacked that in two ways. We did specific whole faculty trainings, myself and Arasto Nova, our bilingual E&L social worker, on what are some of the nuances with our kids, where they're coming from, and how to support them in their buildings. And I'm also very proud to say that we are working on our culturally responsive education. While that's not necessarily a charge of my department, I'm very proud to be a guardian of equity, and we are hitting cohorts of all staff members each year with that, and I'm really proud of that work. I've asked you for more E&L teachers, knowing that we've got CR 154 mandates that we have to meet. I want you to remember that, and I'm going to make a correlation with data. So I've asked you for teachers, I've asked you for those resources. Where have we gotten with that I've asked? So that's going to be connected to my data. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. Serving our families, right? It's really all about that service model. And if we're not serving our families, or if the perception of our families is that we're not serving them, we really need to reflect on what we're doing. And we've done an awful lot of work with the high school team, with central registration, on what does it look like so kids don't fall through the cracks in terms of programming, or who assessed this child. Is there a kid sitting at Albany High School that doesn't have a schedule because, who is responsible for that? So I'm very pleased to say that we have completely revamped the secondary E&L registration process. It was a huge undertaking, but I'm really proud of my colleagues from central office to the high school to central registration. We actually have a flow chart and an accountability and a timeline, and we go back and we double check that every month now at monthly meetings to make sure that we're doing that. And then we are focusing on early literacy with K2, and I know that that's a big board initiative over the past 2 years, but certainly for our L's with what it looks like. And I don't want E&L teachers, I want reading teachers. I want reading teachers that, we know how to teach kids how to read and write. It's all about that early literacy, and giving my current E&L teachers the confidence to be able to deliver that explicit literacy instruction at that early age, or at that developmental age, even though the kids may be older, on that continuum, their literacy skills are low. So don't forget about, I asked for those resources, where did they really get us? So let's start talking about some data outcomes. Again, our L's look different than Guilderland or Niskayuna L's, right? So our L's, again, if you think of it of a continuum, there's 5 different levels, and 70% of our L's are either in the entering and emerging and a little bit of that transitioning. Expanding and commanding, you're on your way to proficiency, and once you're commanding for 2 years, you've hit that mark, you're good to go. So 70% of our L's really are beginners. We have that K-12 model, 18 schools plus the Albany International Center. So let's get into what some of the data trends are looking like. This office, the E&L department, was really formed 3 years ago, so let's take a look at the past 3 years. So L suspension rate, something that we don't normally think about with this subgroup. But when we take a look at where we're at with that, over the past 4 years, the suspension rate has actually dropped 4% for L's. Attendance data. Over the past 3 years, we've increased the overall, and this is district-wide again, E&L attendance data. We're now at 92.78, so I'm going to call that 93% attendance rate, and our goal was 95%. Really excited. 2% maybe doesn't sound that glamorous over 3 years, but it's really all about slow and steady accountability and frequent feedback for the adults, and that's a direct translation of that 2%. I've mentioned not really an achievement gap, but really an opportunity gap for our L's, and that's the mindset that I continue to work through. And as we take a look at how they're comparing to non-L's, for ELA, for NWEA, they've actually caught up with or exceeded the growth percentile for non-L's at 48%. So that means that it's that projection for growth based on that student that they're actually making that progress with non-L's, so to speak, for literacy. I'm getting to the teachers right now. So as we take a look at this graph, and I am really excited, really excited to share with you that Regents data, and I know Mr. Baker is going to let me know as soon as we can do that. But we can extrapolate some other things that maybe would correlate with maybe how some of the Regents data was going. So let's take a look at high school pass rate. Again, the mantra that you're always going to hear from me is all about high school graduation and getting kids through. So how did we do 3 years ago? Well, for ELA, we had an 80% pass rate up to 84%, so 4% growth for ELA class passing rates. High school math, 3 years ago, 56%. Last year, 77%. Science, 3 years ago, the L course pass rate was 64%. Last year, 78%. And then social studies, 3 years ago, the L course passing rate was 63%. Last year was 80%. I heard my special ed colleagues talk about that freshman 5, and again, it's really interesting because, you know, what gets measured gets noticed, and with our new, and a huge shout out to Trish Wolf and Kent Baker and the data team for making data just digestible for folks so that you're not spending your time kind of through the weeds, but you can actually start to see trends and really apply what you need to do. And that freshman 5 is such a powerful indicator for what's going to start to happen for graduation rates. And so we've got a 10%, almost an 11% increase in E&L students that are attaining that freshman 5 as opposed to 3 years ago. So from 75% obtaining that freshman 5 credit to now we're at 85% for Ls. And that cohort, as they continue to grow, I'm confident that that's going to translate into really almost, I'll say, jaw-dropping Regents performance that I'm really excited to share with you when I can. And obviously graduation percentages increasing. Okay, so that's what we got. When we invested in our families and our kids and our teachers, that's not just feeling good about serving Ls, that's not some of those softer metrics, but those are actually meat and potatoes metrics that actually we're moving kids and all the big metrics that we have. And that's a direct result of the very purposeful decision that the board and the district and the city has really decided to commit to. So what's next for us moving forward, building on that? I am really excited to share with you that our district has been chosen as one of 20 districts from New York State and 20 districts from California in the Gates Foundation, and it's got a really long title. It's the Cultivating District Leadership to Build Systems for English Language Learner and Multi-Language Learner Success. And it's a partnership funded by the Gates Foundation, and it's really structured and taught through Stanford University. And it's a comprehensive 3-year process that's going to give us a 3-year plan, but it's not going to be my 3-year plan. My charge, and I've got homework. I met with the Stanford professors last week. Really engaging, really hardcore stuff, but I really loved it because it's very demanding. You know, we have to build a system that's going to outlive all of us, really, right? So we need to create a group of stakeholders that maybe we wouldn't normally think. Maybe I might need, you know, our financial friend, Mr. Hogan, might be on that team, or some other folks. Because what we're going to do is create a team that's really going to come up with very strategic, specific, measurable goals that will be custom made for Albany, that we will have the support of the Gates Foundation and Stanford holding us accountable in a very loving way over the next 3 years, and that's quite a commitment for this group that I'm going to assemble. And with that umbrella, we are going to then set specific goals. So one thing in particular that we're going to have is, what does the Albany International Center look like? What is the ultimate vision for that, and how are we going to strengthen and support that? How are we providing a clear vision for the blueprint for L success? And that's really the model that CR Part 154 grew out of, and that's still alive, and there's a certain accountability for that. How are we refining and expanding the L registration and placement protocols? We've done great work on that, but we're not really done yet. and it's always about closing the opportunity gap for ELS moving forward. Now, within that structure or framework of the Gates Foundation, we are going to be tackling some more specific things based on what this committee or group of leaders are going to be depicting. And I did have more detail at the end of my program review, so again, I'm not going to read it to you. You guys have it. But some nuances, you might be wondering, well, what are we doing about the dual language program? Well, this group that is going to be our L leadership group is, by the end of this year, we need to come up with a strategic plan because these things all are tied together. CR 154 with, if you have 20 students across a grade level in the district that speak a language other than English, we have to have a bilingual program for them. Well, how are we going to choose to strategically do that? Are we going to create an Arabic bilingual program? What are we doing for dual language? Are we going to make it too deep? Are we going to expand it up until 8th grade? What are we doing with the Albany International Center? Are we going to go down into the elementary for that for 3, 4, and 5? So this team, that's just one nuanced goal that we're going to have. We are going to have those answers by the end of this year in terms of what our goals are, and that team is going to come up with those goals for us moving forward. So recommendations for 18-19. As we move forward, right now with our middle level programming, it's imperative that we get support at O'Neill Middle School. We have 36 going on 37 L's there and 1 E&L teacher. And based on the beginning of my presentation with all of those components of CR 154, as well as our strategic plan when we knew we were going to create a new middle school, that we want that programming to look a certain way. And that brings me to another nuance with our plan. We're going to launch a study this year to take a look at what does our E&L programming look like across all of our schools. So in other words, right now we have E&L programming in all of our schools. Is that the most strategic, academically as well as fiscally efficient way to service our kids? Other schools have specific feeder schools that feed into E&L programs, and there's pros and cons to that. Right now I need to continue to educate myself so that I can make a great recommendation for that as a member of that team moving forward. But for right now, we need to have O'Neill supported like our other middle schools are supported. Standalone class for the Albany International Center. I met with Mrs. Stead, and I was pretty eager because I'm like, yeah, let's grow it. Let's keep it going. Phase 2 is supposed to be grades 3, 4, and 5. She told me I needed to calm down a little bit, that we need to make sure that we have a great product right now. And the way that we do that is we strengthen the program that we have right now. And a part of that would be, and you guys have heard me say this before, there is a cohort of kids that they come to us between the ages of 18 and 21. Typically they're 19 or 20. And there's no way that they can pass high school, right? Because they don't speak the language and they age out within 1 to 2 years of getting here. So there's a cohort of kids that when they turn 21, they age out and now they're just out. And they don't have the degree, they don't have the consumer skills, they don't have those social skills. So I feel very passionately that we need to find a way to support these 10 to 15 kids typically, and it grows every year, that age out with nothing. And it's not their fault. It's not from a lack of trying. It's just the way that the system's designed right now. We need to have an 18 to 21-year-old standalone program so that we can service those kids. There's a research-based model that is already doing unbelievable things in the state, and I feel very passionately that we need that to move forward. We've talked briefly about busing. I'll move on. As the department grows, K-12, an assistant director, as we need to focus on elementary, middle, and secondary program. I feel that that is needed. An E&L elementary literacy instructional coach, again, that's not just random. That's really tying into what I've heard the board say is a priority for them, and what we've actually done now with Dr. Strong, giving explicit instruction to the E&L. We have monthly E&L PD with her on how do we teach kids those basic literacy skills. Well, that's great, but I need some more support from an instructional lens on actually doing that coaching model, because doing that 1 hour PD a month isn't really sustainable for us, and we know that that coaching model works. Guidance counselor increased at Albany International Center. We want to departmentalize sixth grade because ultimately I believe the vision for sixth grade in the district is that it will be treated as middle school, and we certainly want AIC to be treated as that. We want to offer a .5 health teacher for AIC, again, getting those kids the credits so that they're successful when they head back to Albany High. We want to change clerk typist with office manager to better meet the needs of the office at AIC. And so the total additional staffing is $602,000 that I would be requesting. Next up, I want to talk about translation interpretation services. So currently, we're under a 2-year contract that's going to end on June 30th of this academic school year. We've upped it to $750,000 for general and assessment. So that's the testing and assessment department as well as my department. The only other separate line that we have for a funding source would be the special education department. And that is all through the IDEA grant, and I believe that's $65,000, and that ends again in June of 18. All other departments, including the communications department, Mr. Lesko's department, when he does district-wide things, he always contacts my office and we coordinate it. They all run through my office. So the 1,300 kids and the 57 languages, every time that there's a parent request for a meeting, or there's a document that a principal wants to send home, or an IEP meeting, well, that's done with Debbie, but everything else comes through my office and we process it and schedule it. So as you can imagine, that's an unbelievable amount of things that need to get done for us. And we've had to increase it. We had set it for a few board meetings. Again, you guys approved to move it from $550,000 to $750,000 due to our increased enrollment. And I don't think I mentioned this, but I had it on one of the slides. Since July 1st to October 19th, we had 180 new Ls join the district. I've talked about the CR Part 154 mandates that we really have to make sure that we're providing. There's some new assessment accommodation mandates, and having the Albany International Center, we're actually getting more parents in, which is a great thing, but we also have to make sure that we're giving all of our services in the language of preference for them moving forward. I'll take questions now.
I get to play president briefly, so I had to step out for a minute. So Tabitha, let's start with you.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. And what became apparent to me is how passionate you are about the subject. You may not realize this, but I'm a product of an immigrant family. And one thing that I can personally attest to is that there's a lot of reverse teaching. So as you empower the students, you empower the family because they naturally become advocates for their parents and things of that nature. So I quite enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
Dr. Tutor?
I am an immigrant. So thank you for this wonderful presentation. At the Albany International Center, are we doing anything with regards to bringing the parents in as well? So because there are some models where you have this co-teach sort of where the students come in, they get the extra support, but in turn they feel like they're teaching the parents, so you get them involved, and it builds that relationship. Are we thinking of doing something like that, where we also educate the parents, so it sort of builds on each other?
So there's a few things. I mean, obviously, Mrs. Stead is doing an awful lot of typical building things where you have parents come out, and there's also a lot of community outreach. But specifically, we've just secured a grant with through Ms. Leffler's office, where we have money set aside for adult English lessons. And I believe we have a partnership that we're going to be entering with the YMCA also. And so I'm really excited that we're actually going to be having a chance to partner up with offering our parents, through the grant, continuing English classes for them. Whether or not it's actually at the school, I don't know if we have the room for it there. Maybe it's going to be at the Y or another satellite, but it's going to be really facilitated. And I think it really transcends a typical school district's role that, typically you don't think that's your charge. But I think we really have gotten the reputation of being a really progressive school district. And so I'm really excited that that's something that we're going to be offering parents this year.
Thank you.
Ms. Lang?
How long does a child who tests into ENL test out? How long are they usually in needing services?
No two L's are the same. So the only thing I can say is getting back to like what do our demographics look like as opposed to a Guilderland. And the big difference is a lot of our kids don't have the first language literacy skills to transfer over into learning English. When you have that, obviously it's really accelerated. Typically our kids don't have that in a sense, but again, I'm very hesitant to paint a brush and say, well, typically this is what happens. For AIC, as you guys know, we've set a goal of, for the secondary kids, hopefully after 2 years, they can get up into the range of an intermediate or transitioning, but every case is different, so it's hard for me to answer that.
I guess, do you track that? Do you track the L's that are coming in that are, so you would have a baseline if you knew they're literate in their language, these L's versus the L's that have no literacy?
Yep, there's actually, the state just came out with what they call a SIFE screener, so it's basically like a 10-page, again, why we need to really reinforce central registration. It's basically like a 10-page assessment that has these certain indicators that you click off a certain amount of them. It's like, okay, well, this child's a SIFE student with interrupted or inconsistent formal education. And so the state is just now figuring out how to kind of quantitate that and figure out, well, SIFEs are different than just typical multi-language learners is a term that you're gonna hear moving forward. We do track our L's every year in terms of how many years have they been in the program moving forward. And actually, as part of that Gates Foundation, they just ran some unbelievable data for us moving forward. I noticed a few glitches in it, and I pointed it out to them, and they're going to be getting back to me. So once I can verify some of that data, tracking long-term L's and what are we doing for long-term L's that haven't been responding, it's kind of exciting work for us moving forward, because I think we're going to be able to target, as I said, some of those more intermediate and long-term L's moving forward. But there's not necessarily a set standard that you can say, okay, in 2.5 years, you should be testing out of ENL services. It doesn't quite work that way.
Ms. Roach? Oh, thank you very much. I really enjoyed your presentation, and I liked both the use of data and the way that you circle back to your previous goals to report on how you've met them. I really admire that, and I think you really set a great example with both what you're doing and the way that you present it to us in a very digestible way. I just had a quick question regarding, you were talking about potential expansion of the international program to elementary school age, and I seem to remember you saying in a previous presentation that the K2s are better served in their, in integrated classrooms. So would the elementary school expansion be 3 to 12 then, or is the model changed?
Phase 2, which you may or may not remember from last year, would have been grades 3, 4, and 5, and then the standalone program as well. Research absolutely indicates what you're saying, that actually those kids are better off left with the proper supports in the general ed setting, K1 and 2, because they have, everyone's kind of learning literacy skills at that point. But once you get to 3rd grade, then you're starting to have that gap. So if we were to do it, my recommendation would be to go down in 3, 4, 5. But again, I want to have a big strategic goal for that.
I was going to say that the follow-up question, and I'm only asking this because the other thing that you put on board docs was these very wonderful, detailed, logical instructions for testing and the classrooms and whatever, and I love that you had the logistics down, is if the international school is 3 through 12, what will we do with the kids? How will we keep families together? What are we thinking as far as families going to different schools? I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm saying, do you have any ideas?
If we went 3 through 12?
Yeah. If we go through,
I think if we went 3 through 12, it actually would be easier to keep the newcomer families together in that sense. Right now, again, I got to give a shout out to Principal Buff. She's been great in terms of, working with North Albany Elementary School in strengthening her own ENL program there. As you heard Mr. Finn reference, well, we try and do everything we can to keep families together. And I work with our central registrar on minute-by-minute basis on every single L that gets placed, we talk about. So all those 180 kids, we talked about them since July 1st, and we talked about, well, what does the family look like? Where do they live? How can we support them? And we try and do workarounds like, okay, so we know transportation might be an issue. Let's see if, what is the availability on the school that's on their side of town? And our principals have done a great job in really trying to be cognizant of that. So actually, I think it would help us if we had a 3, 4, and 5 program right at AIC, because we could just keep the whole family right there.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Ms. Smith?
Great presentation, and congratulations on this grant, I think, right?
Yes.
A couple of questions. With regard to the grant, does that allow for staffing?
I would defer to Ms. Leffler on the details of it, but
Okay.
basically, people had to put in a bid for services, I believe, and we're selecting what organization we feel can meet the needs of that service. So we're not going to necessarily, we might have one district person that might kind of oversee it, but it's going to be this.
It's really grant related.
Yeah,
not
it's
service.
Yeah. So we're going to have someone provide that for us, so we're not going to have to create it. Like have our staff teaching the actual English classes. We're going to have an existing company do that.
Got it. And I know that you had a winter program last year. We're going to have that this year?
We're
again?
not.
We're not.
We're not, because now we have the Albany International Center,
Okay.
and I
So
think.
I didn't see it, so I wondered.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think again, I probably have it buried in my program review. It was a 4-day program, and again, for us to be so progressive to even think about doing that, it was great. The good news is we've created the International Center so that we don't have to do that. But it was a good experience, and there's survey data in my program review that talks about what that mini academy was for those kids for those 4 days.
And so when you spoke about the CR 154 mandates, I was trying to think in my head, do you mean something new, or is it that like something new has been in effect for all districts, or is it that for the first time we have enough students, for instance, to where we have to meet that requirement of, if you have 20 or more students who speak the same language, same grade level? Right.
Well, it's fascinating because it came out in 2015, and people
Right.
had an interpretation of it, right? So all the districts were trying to interpret, what does this really mean? And one of the things the state allowed us to do was create a 5-year waiver as we figured out and give us time to, like, you have 2 months to build bilingual programs. They actually had some foresight to say, well, you can have a waiver. So our district did submit a 5-year waiver that will run out in 2020 in terms of that particular nuance of, well, the many components of CR 154. And I kind of will be posing the question to the team once it's formed for the Gates work. So in 2020, we need to have this addressed. There's more than one way to do it, but we need to really be thoughtful and strategic, because obviously facilities are an issue. There's all kinds of things that we have to think about, including, our demographics, what that looks like for us.
Right. Okay, and
Ms. Smith.
just one final. And you said, I think a change in assessments or mandate, a new mandate in assessments, I think
Yep.
is how you put it. Could
Yeah.
you just elaborate?
Yeah, basically, through the assessment protocol, there are very specific supports that we have to have in place for the different local and state assessments, for kids to have either test interpreters available to read the test to kids along those lines. So the regulations have tightened up in the past few years in terms of what that looks like. So there's just been a demand, really, to make sure we have more interpreters to do it, throughout all of the testing grades, and that includes Regents.
Ms. Wilson?
And
did
wait till you
have-
get the Regents data. The Regents data, I cannot wait to share it with you.
Did you have another question?
I just wanted to clarify on page 8 of the slides. Was that the same cohort from 2014 to 2016, or were those like independent groups of students?
With the bar graph?
Yes.
So that would be the district, that would be the cohort that's going through all of the kids all of the L's in Albany High School that took ELA courses, what their percentage was. So in a sense, it's not necessarily the same cohort because it was all 4 grade levels at that time. So it's not necessarily
Like
cohort
an overlap,
based.
so to speak,
It
though.
overlapped, but what's fascinating is the trends were all the same in all the under the 4, content areas. So that tells me that there's a positive trend there. So it's basically every ENL. We have about 327 L's in Albany High right now. So while our numbers have increased, we've actually increased our proficiency levels. So it was really great data to see.
Thank you.
Dr. Chitor, did you have another question?
Maybe I missed this. What does a Title III immigrant do?
I'm sorry, say that again.
I mean, in your department structure, you have a Title III immigrant and a Title III LEP.
Those are grants. Those are grants that have different parameters around what you can spend and what you can't spend on them.
Ms. Lang?
I just want to follow up with Vicky's question about the grant. We're not necessarily getting any money for the grant, from the grant. So what is the grant? They're coming in and facilitating?
I
next
apologize.
steps?
I wasn't prepared to talk about that. I don't have the details of it right now. I can circle back with Eileen's office. But basically, it's, and you have to forgive me, I don't even know the title of the grant right now. I just know that I actually had a meeting set up tomorrow with her to talk about selecting vendors and what that's going to look like for us moving forward. There's going to be 2 major components. One would be the adult English classes, and another would be enrichment programming for our kids after school. And so I'm more than happy to circle back around.
Oh, so it's not part of the next plan with CRE 154?
Nope,
anything like that. These are just-
that's just a separate grant that we have that Eileen was able to find for us.
Ms. Roach, did you have another
I'll
question?
do a board update.
No, I didn't have another question. Thank you.
Ms. Smith, you already asked 4 questions. May I ask a question
Yes,
before
come on.
you
I did not
a
ask any summer school questions.
May I ask a question?
Okay. This is just one thing I noticed. So I think it's the new staffing impact for 18-19. So in the program review, the total amount was $560,000, but in the slides here, I think you had $602,000. But I also think there's $800 missing. So I'm just, want to make sure you give us the.
Yes, the slides are the updated. I submitted the program review a while ago, so I apologize that I didn't go back and amend that, but the slides are the more up-to-date numbers.
So I have just 2 questions I wanted to follow up on. You mentioned briefly the dual language program, and I wanted to just get a little more sense of what the thinking is from the administration about how the ENL program and the dual language program are or are not, and it's too bad Ms. Lang stepped out. Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask my other question first, and you can wait till she gets back, because I know that's something she cares deeply about. My second question was related to something Ellen was asking about keeping families together. We, I think, really had been pleased with the intention around keeping North Albany as our elementary school in the same building as the International Center so that we could service our K-2s even when you get to phase 2, all in the same building, because as a parent, I think most of us understand how terrifying it would be to be in a new country and have to put your babies on 2 different buses in 2 different directions and you don't even know where you're going. So we love the fact that they're all in the same school, but we know that there are other grade configuration questions arising in this district. And so I'm wondering how much utilization that's really getting. How many families are being placed in such a way that they have elementary kids in North Albany Academy and older children in the International Center? Is that happening a lot so that we should be looking to keep an elementary school option?
I think absolutely, yes. I wish we had more spaces. It's tough, especially as we get to the middle of the school year when we're having to take families with like 3 siblings and we're putting them in 3 different schools. And it's tough because we're putting kids where we have space to put them in, as opposed to like really what's the best fit for the family. So yeah, we've done a great job. Again, Mrs. Buff has been amazing in coordinating that for us. But what happens is it might not even be an ENL issue. Maybe that 3rd grade class happens to have 28 kids in it.
Right.
And I just don't have the room. So I always ask, okay, how many L's are in that grade and how many just typical kids are in the sections, because more often than not even, it's just a typical class size where I can't put any type of child in there. And that's where we're running into, I'll talk with Marva as the registrar, and I'll say, okay, where are we at with third grade across the district? Because I've got this family, I need to place these kids. And she'll be like, oh no, third grade's closed, just not even an E&L issue, like third grade's just closed because of numbers
I
here.
understand. That what I really wanted to hear was that first part of that, which is that yes, that's really working the way we wanted it to, so that when we're looking at what comes next, we need to keep doing that as we change whatever happens at the middle school level. So then my first question was, can you talk a little bit about how our long-time successful dual language program is or is not part of your vision, because in your answers that you gave us in writing, it sort of implied that it was like on its own little track in its own little world, and that doesn't seem really to be okay. Like, we need to be one district doing one thing. So I'd like to hear more about that.
Absolutely. My job is to support the director of the dual language program, which is the principal, Dr. Lane, and coming up with a strategic plan for, I think two things. How do we grow the program, and how do we ensure fidelity of the program? And as I've had my meetings with him, he's been focusing on the fidelity aspect of the program for the native Spanish speakers as well as the native English speakers. I've told him about the GATES program. He's obviously going to be someone I'm going to be asking to come on board for that long-term 3-year strategic plan for what are we doing. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. We can continue with our fidelity of services and making sure that we're measuring kids, in English and Spanish with all those metrics, but also what's the vision for the program in terms of, growing this very successful program. And then there's that third wheel of the compliance issue with CR 154. So there are moving parts to it, and that's why I do not want to be casual with, we're going to do this with the dual language program. There needs to be more strategic input in that. But to answer your question, I support the director who's the principal.
Well, I just want to follow up a little bit. I mean, the dual language program wasn't part of a SEP plan. It's never been a pullout. So I guess the reason the questions were asked earlier was because there was no metrics for it there was no pullout under you, and there's no pullout for the program that does have very set different curriculum, data points, and we just can't seem to get any kind of update or measurables about the program, if it's working or if it's not working. And so I think that, and it's a completely separate program in the district that's not in the SEPs for DCS, and it's not under you. So I think that's where some of the confusion is for board members.
Does somebody want to maybe address that in some way? Or even just maybe put it in an SBU, but just
we can.
Basically just to see that it doesn't fall through the cracks, and understandably, there's a real concern that Ms. Lang has voiced that I think is shared.
Excuse me.
Ms. Adams, we'll do it in that way, if that's correct. So thank you very much, and for all of your presentation, Mr. Giglio. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Ms. McKenna, thank you again for being a fixture this evening at the middle table. We'll try to give you relief 2 weeks from now. We are now on to board committee report. Oh, thank you. Board committee reports. Okay, so was there
Yes, the policy committee met because we're good girls. Yes, we are. So policy committee met on October 23rd. You will recall that we were scheduled to meet on October 11th, but everybody else was having a good time at NYSBA, so we decided to meet on the 23rd of October instead. We discussed the homebound instruction policy, which is a new policy for us. There is a manual that the staff's been using, but we need a policy to attend to that. We talked briefly about student attendance. You will all be glad to know that our attendance is essentially flat from the prior year, does not go down, which means that we do not legally need to require to review the attendance policy. However, staff would like to review the policy in the beginning of the next calendar year to make sure that the policy is as good as it can be. So we have that intended to come back to us probably in January. We spent a long time talking about transportation, as you may have guessed from my pointed remarks to Mr. Diglia. I'm sorry about that, Tom. But there are a lot of legal requirements around transportation that are very difficult for us to do what we believe to be equitable and right and still be in compliance with the law, which is a real major challenge for us. We also talked about all of the policies related to voting. So that's all about the voting procedures and candidacy and all of that stuff. And Mr. Aloy from Mr. Honeywell's office is working on that. And we expect to have those before you, hopefully at the next board meeting. The next policy committee meeting coincides with my birthday because you guys know how much I love policy, so we're going to spend my birthday talking about the wellness policy on November 8th. Everybody have a good time. And it will not be held at Academy Park. It will be held, hopefully we have a location. No location yet? Do we have a location? Paula, can you tell the location, which you probably told me and I just forgot? It will be at the Media Center at Harriet Gibbons. I knew that was one of the choices, and I apologize for not having retained that piece of information so that we can welcome the many people we expect to be coming to the Wellness Committee. I assume that that will be communicated out to the world somehow by SNN, and that we can maybe even post a note on the door at Academy Park. Thank you.
She doesn't mean somehow, meaning that we don't get it out there. It's the end of the night, it's colloquial, it's, you know. So, Ms. Smith?
Sure, just to announce that the next meeting of the Facilities Committee is Wednesday, November 29th at 5:30 at Academy Park, where we will, have an update and discuss facilities. Absolutely. Thank you.
We had a governmental relations committee meeting this past week on Monday morning, and basically just to follow up to the wonderful meeting that Jen had arranged for us that we all were at, and the superintendent and Mr. Hogan and Mr. Lesko and Dr. Chator and me, and I'm sure I'm forgetting other people. But anyway, it was just to do a sort of debriefing and then to talk about next steps, and also Ms. Lang, I know, has talked at the last meeting about scheduling our legislators next, and then there was a discussion whether or not we might want to go to back to the governor's office if there were additional people sort of in a higher position who might be interested in discussing further the regional perspective, the growth of the international school in any way to provide more funding for that. And so it was, we will await a further update at another meeting with regard to the next scheduled sit-downs that Ms. Lang schedules.
Just for the record, I show a facilities meeting on the 7th. The next, there's one on the 29th, and I believe
there is one on the 7th at
Yes.
5 o'clock. And you actually did send an email saying that that was okay with you, but it's just been one of those weeks, I assume.
Just for the record, I just wanted to.
So yes, thank you so much, Tabitha Wilson. Thank you, thank you. There is a facilities meeting based on the fact that Mr. Lesko, yes, how can I help you? 5 o'clock. Because of the fact that one of our participants needs to be leaving at 5:30, and I believe it's Rich Peckham, and as a result, Mr. Hogan had asked if everyone could make it at 5, and both Ms. Smith and Ms. Roach said that they could make it, as did I. So November 7th at 5 o'clock, and it is at Academy Park. Seeing no other board committee meeting. No, Ms. Oh, yes, audit, Ms. Roach.
So I just wanted to announce that this month I'm going to be transitioning from the Facilities Committee to the Policies Committee, so the Facilities Committee meeting on the 7th will be the last.
Oh, so actually
Assuming
the
you still-
date yet,
or
it
did
has,
that
Ms.
change?
No, well, what was going to happen
When is
is
that going to
Ms.
change?
Savage and you were going to cross paths, but there's some work she's not ready to leave.
Oh, she's not
policy.
ready to leave
Yeah,
yet.
she
That's-
wants, so
that's
you're
why I
going.
didn't want to stop attending facilities.
So
But
as a-
well, then I'll be attending the
There you
Facilities
go.
Committee and also the, and I'll be a
Great,
Committee
terrific. So,
observer.
thank you all. And
no.
Ms.
Excuse me.
Wilson, I
No,
did
no,
place a
no.
phone
Excuse me.
call, and I
Excuse
should
me.
tell.
Excuse me, please. I so apologize for making Mr. Fox sit through the entire meeting.
Oh,
But I would absolutely like to
Jared Fox, oh my
introduce
gosh.
Mr. Fox as the new assistant principal at Giffen.
so
Thank you so very much. We appreciate you hanging in here. So thank you so very much, and congratulations on your appointment.
Mr. Fox, we're really sorry. Here's how it's supposed to go, and we were so quick in getting through routine consent that normally at the end of routine consent, what we have is the administrators announced, and then they are free to leave. So really tremendous apologies that it seemed to get away from us tonight. It was a chock-full meeting, and you have the board's apologies, but you just tell everyone with whom you work that you sat here through the whole thing and how riveting it was. So welcome. So on to board discussion now, and I'll just start because it's a segue from what I started to say to Ms. Wilson during the committee part still. And that is that I did put a phone call into NYSBA to discuss the issue of committees and numbers, and I was trading phone calls with Jay Warona, but he will be in the office tomorrow afternoon, and I will have the vital answer to 3, 4 open meetings law kind of thing. When as I explained to Ms. Savage, when I started on the board, I was told that there were 3 board members on a committee,